Because you've got powerful legs. How did you get the physique? Was it gym or how did you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing or mine.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, folks, to the 623rd edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. You can catch us Sundays at 8 o'clock in the UK, 12 Pacific time in the United States. And the next day, you can find us wherever you catch your favorite podcast. Get in on more of the fun. Check out patreon.com/Boxing Asylum and get in on more of the fun. Unfortunately, it looks like it's just me today. These things do happen, so don't be shocked if this is a quick rundown. Sorry if it's not as adventurous as usual. So let's start with what I think was probably the biggest card of the weekend, which was happening over in Birmingham. You had Canelo Yafai getting whooped up on by Francisco Rodriguez Jr. I thought Rodriguez had a knockdown earlier in the fight that didn't get called. He definitely got one in the 12th. Very wide cards. Nary given Yafai a round. Rodriguez onwards, upwards, towards a fight with Kenshiro Taraji, most likely. And Yafai back to the drawing board, unfortunately. And he was just overwhelmed by a guy with a vast amount of experience. Who has fought lower weights. He's fought at higher weights. He's been with some exceptional punchers, only been stopped once in his career. And he went the distance with Nakatani, he went the distance with Ioka, and unfortunately, he just for Yafai, he just ran into a very good fighter. And I think Rodriguez is a very good example of those times when a fighter, is a very good fighter, but he just can't seem to find his way to, greater notoriety or to bigger title chances and things of that nature, just because there's so much talent around him. What are you going to do when Ioka and Nakatani are, your potential foes? And he also got stopped by Chocolatito earlier in his career. He's been around. He's fought everyone. If you want to talk about an experience gap, this one was absolutely massive in this fight. So we'll see where Yafai goes from here at this point. But unfortunately, he might be running into the same problem that Rodriguez had, just on the other side of it, where there's just a little too much talent based on his level. And people might say, oh, you moved him too fast, or any other thoughts that they might have on it. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe this is just his level, and he ran into a guy like Rodriguez who just offers a style that can obviously give him more, all the trouble he can handle and more. Justin hopping on, thankfully, from Little Rock for a few minutes here. Appreciate you, Justin. I'm going to try to run through this as fast as physically possible.
I understand, man. No, I figure I thought I'd have time. We had, like I said, I'll be in Little Rock and people listening, you don't really want to visit Little Rock. It's not a recommended town I would want to go to. I don't even know if you can hear me well, but we're sitting in the hotel. We're sitting in the hotel lobby just waiting for, I guess, get something to eat. We hadn't eaten all day. We flew in this morning. But I heard you talking about the Yafai fight, and, man, that's like a career-ending loss because he took an absolute – I mean, that's a beating you take. You don't come back from those kind of beatings. I think you said that's one of those where he's already 32. I think the announcers kept trying to say, "Oh, he's a young 32." There ain't no such thing as a young 32. You still have to count the amateur fights. You still have to count all the training for the amateur fights. He's 32 years old. I don't ever believe he's an old or young anything. And Rodriguez just beat the piss out of him. And I think the coolest part of that fight is I think it was the 9th round. When he just went out like a windmill. I think Rodriguez threw like 12 straight punches, and they almost all landed, and Yafai was just like backing up, and like he was just overwhelmed. I think most of that fight, Rodriguez just overwhelmed him. Like he was just throwing so much, so often. Yafai couldn't do anything to stop that. He was just, I guess that's the best way to put it. He was just overwhelmed. It was too much. He just didn't have a way. He had never seen that kind of style before. He just couldn't stop it. He couldn't deter Rodriguez. And for me, I think the big moment of that fight was when Rodriguez hurt him in the first round and almost knocked him down. That's all that Rodriguez needed. The underdog who was already, once he stung him a little bit, boom, that's all he needed. And then he just put it on him.
Yeah, and it was weird because Yafai, like I give him a lot of credit for not really going down prior to that last round. I mean, I said there was an arguable knockdown earlier in the fight, but it seemed like every time he got touched, he was hurt, and he almost seemed like he was outstanding. And then he would come through all. I'm like, Jesus, I don't think the referee did him any favors in saving him. I think he ended
Yafai being so tough. End up screwing him in the long run. He would have been better off if his corner should have pulled him because they knew the scorecard. It wasn't like, okay, he lost by 12 rounds, 11 rounds. The corner knew that. They're not stupid. They should have pulled him. They should not have. If they were trying to have any hopes that he was going to do something, you can't let him take 12 rounds of that. They screwed up on that one. You can't let him take 12 rounds of that. You just can't. They didn't read the room. The moment was too big for them. They just didn't handle it well. He should have never been in the 9th round. I'll say it again. When Yafai got like 11 straight punches pretty much landed on him and he couldn't even throw anything back, you got to pull him. Why in the world they let him take all those rounds? I'll never know. I don't know. And Rodriguez, I think you said it last week. I think Steve said it. Everybody knew this was going to be 12 rounds. They knew Yafai was not going to stop this guy. This guy is as tough as a $2 steak. But I didn't think Yafai would get the hell beat out of him. But I'm not surprised Rodriguez won. I'm not shocked by the win. I'm just shocked by he beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what though, that is, you probably just saved him from a future beating from Taraji, because I think style-wise, Kenshiro would have been terrible for him. But you talk about fight styles that gel well. I'm really looking forward to the prospect of Taraji against Rodriguez, which this should absolutely set up. What a freaking
that'd be a good fight.
That could be. I mean, we could be sitting here at the end of the year talking about 2 Taraji fights. Which one was the fight of the year? Let's can say that.
Let's just hope Rodriguez passes the beef test, and then we're good to go. I mean, because when we talked about I think we've been talking about it for the last day and a half on the WhatsApp group. He is with the beef team. He is in that area code. Man, I hope he does, because the one thing that you look at is, man, not many guys can do what he did for 12 rounds and have that kind of motor. He just was uncut up. I mean, I'm praying, I'm hoping he passes the beef test and we ain't got to deal with no stupid shit like that.
Oddly enough, his fight before this one had been changed to a no contest by the Texas commission.
I think Steve said it. I think Steve said, I don't know if he was joking. I think Steve said it was what, gun related though, wasn't it? Didn't he do something?
Oh, Jesus
I swear Steve said it wasn't drugs. It was like gun related. I don't even know if Steve was messing. That's what he said. I don't know if he allegedly. Now we got to add that in there. Allegedly gun related. But I think
they're out to get you when the state of Texas decides they're going to fucking no contest you on gun charges. You're like, bitch.
No, I mean, if they change it to a no contest, that means he wasn't busted because we would have heard that. He would have had that would have come up. So it must have been something. It couldn't have been drugs. Is why it was a no contest. I don't know why it was shady. But it wasn't drugs. I don't know what it was, but let's just hope, because if he passes that, then we got a warrior on our hands. If he fails that, we got another just dirty ass cheater, and Yafai's career got screwed over by somebody who cheated. I don't want to see that. I want it to be fair. He whooped him. Let's move on.
Yeah, I would ultimately hope that isn't the case, because I mean that changes everything, and then we don't get Rodriguez against Taraji either, which I'm just. Oh man, I'll be I have no problem waking up at 4 a.m. for that one, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be a barn burner, and both of these guys throw and throw hard late, get stoppages late sometimes. I mean, you're not going to be able to turn away. It's going to be on the table the entire fight. So hopefully that happens before the end of the year, because that's a hot fight right there, people. But also on that card we had Conor Walker and Liam Taylor engaging in what the hell it was a very good slugfest where Taylor. Really
man, I don't mean to break up your flow. Have you talked about the Norman fight yet?
No.
Can we discuss that real quick? Because I got about 3 minutes. I don't mean to jump in. I just want to talk about the knockout real quick.
That was the knockout of the year candidate.
Beautiful,
sure, yeah.
Beautiful. Because he'd been setting that left hand up and landed, but man, that was just boom thud. That has to be knockout of the year. That was Sasaki was another guy. I think you said it last week perfectly. He's a Kama guy. That's exactly who he's going to be. And he was too tough for his own good. And Norman, I think maybe it's just me, but I think it kind of pissed Norman off that Sasaki was still standing there. And he was like, you know what? I could tell that Norman was like, man, he shouldn't be up. Like, it was pissing him off that he wasn't knocking him out yet, and that he was still having to go out there. You could tell his corner was like, man, finish this dude. But then he kind of little step to his left, pop, boom, man, that was beautiful. There's no way anybody's beating that. If somebody's beating that, and the guy ain't getting up, because that is the kind of stuff that you watch boxing for. Because I mean, you're like, oh, you sit there and you're watching, you're like, oh shit. I mean, he was just bam, right on the perfect on the chin, textbook. And me and you both said it. We were definitely wrong on Norman. Because he's legit. Sasaki is not a superstar, but he's a tough, decent fighter, and he beat the brakes. The only thing about Sasaki is, though, he was tailor-made for Norman. He doesn't move his head. He has no defense at all. He just relies on being tough and overwhelming you. And Norman, that you might as well, if they went to a lab and made a dude for him to fight, Sasaki is the guy you would fight. He has a massive Kama guy head. It's just right there. He's like a potato on a toothpick kind of, you know what I'm saying? The head is right there. It's right there. And Norman, you remember Norman? I don't think Norman, if he did miss, he didn't miss much. Everything he was throwing was going to do something. And that was perfect. I mean, just bam. And on a side note, I must be missing something here. I don't know. I think they had a Kid Rock concert here last night or something, but there's like 500 people walking around just carrying their boots in their hands, their cowboy boots in their hands, and wearing tennis shoes. I don't know what's going on, why they all need the boots, but that's just a side note. But man, I got a roll. Sucks you're by yourself. Like I said, I didn't know this was coming up till the last second.
So good.
I didn't know we were doing it.
Yeah, you have yourself a good journey down there, man, and we'll catch you around next week.
Well, it's not going to be a good journey. It'll be 6 days here, but I'll talk to you later, man. Love
best
y'all.
of luck. Let's survive the hillbillies. So, yeah, Justin.
I am one.
yeah, you can speak some hillbilly. I'm with you. So, right on. Well, Justin in Arkansas, pray for him. We wish him the best. There's terrible things that happen down there, but I don't think they'll happen to him because, well, he's a white male. Going back to that card from Birmingham, Conor Walker and Liam Taylor. What a fantastic fight that was. Taylor really tried to stand in there with Walker, but unfortunately, he just didn't quite have the firepower. Walker is really developing as a fighter as he gets this on-the-job training, getting a 7th-round stoppage with a great body shot in there, and we'll see what happens with him at 147. I think, he's got to be looking higher level after beating Taylor, but I think Walker against Esserman stylistically would gel very, very well. So we'll see how that goes. But that was a fun fight, and Taylor really tried to hang in there as best he could. And he landed some shots, but Walker's a tough mofo. So, but yeah, that was a good one. All in all, this card was fairly entertaining from what I saw. The only one I had, to be fair, the only one I had that really paid much attention to on top of that was Peter McGrill against Ionut Baluta. This is one a majority decision where I actually kind of thought maybe McGrill won the better portion of the rounds, and Baluta didn't have an argument. He's one of those guys that gets to split some majorities, and you think, he could have won that one. I don't know about this one. Kind of thought that card was a bit favorable to him, but I mean, for coming in short notice on this one, I think it wasn't supposed to be Shabazz Massoud in there before, but it was just a really a decent performance from McGrail, who's doing well to rebuild off of that knockout loss. So best of luck to him moving forward on that one. And also we'll go with that. Brian Norman, he really did look good knocking out Jin Sasaki. I enjoyed that fight a great deal. I mean, because you got to give Sasaki some credit as far as it goes. I mean, because he does come in there throwing, and he's not going to lay down, but you kind of got you got to really consider Norman's punching power and what he brings to the ring there, because a guy like Sasaki, you're kind of expecting him to kind of be saved by the corner more so than not. And these guys, they just absorb it and they come forward. But Norman got him down early, and he got him down in the 5th and finished it off. Left hook being the better weapon that he had in his arsenal, but he kind of landed a little bit of everything in there, to be honest with you. He had some. Basically landed every shot in the book, but the left hook was definitely the money shot for him. And when Sasaki went down on that one, he kind of took the 2-shotter from the one where your head hits the back, it hits the canvas pretty hard, and you're in a bad way, more so than just from the punch. So we do wish him the best in their recovery. They tried to stretch him out, and he didn't want to. Sasaki he's a bad mofo, but he's just not a fighter at the highest level at welterweight. Doesn't have what it necessarily is going to take. I mean, Norman, he had the power advantage, the speed advantage, the athletic advantage. I mean, it's just there's the only option that Sasaki was going to have would be to absorb him, take him out late, and he wasn't able to get through the 5th round. Christian Arnetta losing a decision to Thanaksak Simsari in a fight for the IBF light flyweight title that was vacant. Went to a split decision. Good close fight. Another one of them under 108-pound battles that is probably worth your time. Check that one out. A really good 4-rounder despite a dubious ending. And that between Sora Tanaka and Takuru Kobata. In the 4th round, Kobata had come back pretty darn well. I mean, these guys were eating punches, and Tanaka, he's a young fighter. He only had 3 fights coming into this one. They're moving him on pretty quickly, and he was just backing up Kubota the whole fight. But Kubota was landing a lot of shots over the top. He found more left hands than you could believe. I mean, these guys for 4 rounds were just winging it. And it did look like Tanaka was getting the best of it. But then Kubota landed a smoking body shot, and he seemed to bother Tanaka. And then Tanaka came back with a couple of combinations, and the referee stepped in and seemed a little odd, and they said, he didn't seem to complain a bit. I mean, he threw his arms out in the air when the referee did it. It's Japan. They have a very respectful culture. I don't think he's going to start throwing punches at the referee, but necessarily even throwing a fit. But I thought that, unfortunately, the referee robbed Kabata of a chance to turn it around. Could he have? I don't know. But it was a really, really fun fight. Tanaka is going, for as long as his career lasts, he is going to be in some fights. Oh, over the years. I don't even know over the years, over the months. But this guy, he throws them, he takes them. But the referee, I don't necessarily know if the referee saved him from what could have been a beating or anything like that, because I think he was on his way to victory possibly. But I think what the referee might have done more so than anything was just prevented us from a couple of more rounds and in what was a very entertaining fight. Maybe you say, oh, Kubota didn't need didn't need to take any more any more punishment in there, but he certainly, but he after a guy hurts another dude, yeah, and even if the other guy didn't go down and turn it around, you have to give some consideration to that. I mean, he wasn't in fucked up land like Jose Luis Castillo was against the ropes against Diego Corrales after dropping Corrales 3 times in what was, you could see on his face, it was a good call by the ref. I think the ref kind of screwed up on this one and messed up this little welterweight battle. I would almost be curious, though, if Sasaki is able to withstand going into the ring again, because that was a fucking bad knockout. He'll be okay, I guess. But him against Tanaka in a 147-pound fight could really be a fun battle, honestly. And we'll see if Tanaka can get there. I mean, someone can knock him off. What's lucky for him, I guess, is the fact that there's not a ton of welterweight talent stacked at 147 pounds. It's not like he's working his way up through 115 where he would have ran into a buzzsaw at this point in time already, or not necessarily at this point, but inevitably who would take him down. He's got a little bit longer way to go and some easier steps to take, but we'll see. I kind of like Sasaki and Tanaka at some point next year. But I don't know. We'll see what if that happens to occur. I also watched David Stevens get a win too recently. If you might remember, he was in the ring with Beck the Bully, and it ended up going to a split decision. And he came back with this one and beat the undefeated Peter Komikov. It was a really close fight. He won on cards of 97, 93 all the way around. You could have argued that Komikov might have been able to nick a draw on that one. It's weird to say those were too wide when I'm only thinking a round or two, closer, but it kind of, I don't know. Komikov did good work, but I think you have to consider Komikov decent quality, and you also have to consider Stevens of decent quality. The way he stood up to Beck, and in this victory too, over an undefeated fighter, there's something to him. I mean, he lost by a first round knockout to Joe Sean James. I mean, that is kind of embarrassing in itself, I guess. But these things do happen. You can't really, it's just freak accidents and stuff. So I wouldn't count David Stevens out necessarily. And I don't know, Joe Sean James, yeah. So we'll see where he might go with this one. But let's see. What else do we have on the docket this week? Let's go to this. We're going through this one quick, folks. Don't have anyone with us here, so we will go, kind of running through this one. Thank God there's not it's not a big fight week where I'm disappointed with no one to discuss anything with. Oh, yeah, and I also watched some Vito Milnicki. Yeah, he looked okay. That card was all right. All in all, I'm not gonna lie, dozed off during it. It's been a long day. But so we got some fights coming up though. Gonna go to Canada on Friday. The slow burning career of Christian Billy continues. He's going in against Lecky over 12 rounds. The vacant WBC going to be on the line for this one. Unfortunately, Stephen Butler was supposed to fight. What's his name? Fought Munguia to a good fight. Anyways, now he's fighting Jose De Jesus Macias. Arislandic Mahmudov is trying to keep going, taking on Ricardo Brown. And Wilkins Mateo is on there. He's a decent enough to watch sometimes. I don't know. And Billy really, there's a lot to like about him, Billy, but they need to get this career going. They need to find him a decent opponent here. For the love of God, maybe get him in with the winner of Shiraz and Berlanga. This is I have my doubts about him because he only seems to fight on one speed at the end of the day. He doesn't really have any off-speed stuff whatsoever, and I think that even though he's going to be coming forward, putting a lot of pressure on you, and you're going to have to really try to slow it down and look through the shots. But I think a fighter is gonna catch him one of these days here, and not too far along in the middle of an exchange, and send Billy onto his back. And what happens from there, we'll find out. It's God, why I'm struggling for names, but yeah, Butler. It's good to see him out. He's a decent enough fighter. He's one of those Canadian favorites, and he's been in a few good ones. Also, we're going to have on there. Let's see here. We're gonna that same night we're gonna have that big old BL King Prime pay-per-view from the Las Vegas of the Plains, Wichita, Kansas. And that's it's a pay-per-view. I'm not gonna be buying this one, ladies and gentlemen. Not a fantastic card by any stretch of the imagination. While they're going in with Terrell Herndon, who he's no great shakes. I think he's might have been in with Torres for some reason. But 10 rounds, that's what it's scheduled for. I don't know. Wilder needs to be able to pull the trigger again. And if there's anything, he's kind of looked a little bit hesitant to be able to throw it. But he just needs to let his hands go, and he should win. I mean, even at his age, he's got a hell of a punch, obviously, and he should be taking out guys like this until he's 50, if he so chooses. Gustavo Trujillo is taking on Latif Coyote. I'm kind of interested to check out this Castillo or this Trujillo here because I haven't seen what the heck Latif Coyote's been doing for a long time here. You might remember him from top rank undercards and I think PVC undercards. He just kind of bounced around and they never found a home for him. I think he fought to an odd little draw with Antonio Tarver for some reason, and what might have been one of Tarver's final fights of his career. Yep, and no contest. He also has a no contest with Luis Ortiz, which was actually he stopped him in the first round. But yeah, he's been having a bad run. So he was undefeated until he had those no contests, keeping him quote unquote undefeated. And then he lost to Lebedev, and then Tapia, and then Tabiti, and then Igorov. And then he was out of the ring for 5 years and came back against some guy named Chad Davis. And he got stopped by him, then fought a debuting Yoandy Tolrak last December and lost by a stoppage in the 4th round. So, yeah, I was wondering what happened to that name. Yeah, that is really a name from the past because he's been out of the round or out of the ring for, more or less for a grip. That Tolrak has come back with 2 more victories. He's currently living in the States. He's a Cuban import. Yeah, he's got a decent little resume going here. So maybe we won't hold that against Latif Coyote. But his opponent here, 7-0, Gustavo Trujillo. The Mexican heavyweight's very uncommon, but and I'm incorrect. Here I go, looking like a racist. He's another Cuban. He's getting fed to these Cubans left and right. Trujillo, he's fought nobody particularly dangerous in his career. Some experienced guys, nobody with a super strong record. So this is kind of his first test in a way right here. So I guess we'll see where this goes for Mr. Coyote and Mr. Trujillo. I guess that makes this card slightly interesting in its own odd way. But I don't, man, it's a rough one. Nico Hernandez is on there. He's still undefeated. Another guy who's been waiting to get a decent fight, and he's going in there against a 3-14-1 guy in a pay-per-view. Sweet fucking Jesus. I don't know what to tell people anymore. This sport is just fucking all sorts of shitsville, it seems like at times. And then the next day, to add to your pay-per-view woes, from Anaheim, California, you got Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. at pay-per-view over 10 rounds, cruiserweight. We'll see how that one looks. I have no fucking clue about these Jake Paul fights anymore. I have no clue what Chavez is going to look like. I have no clue if it matters whatsoever. Who are they talking about Paul fighting after this? Maybe an exhibition with Gervonta Davis. Fucking stupid as anyhow. On this, unfortunately, there's a couple of fights on this card that I am reasonably interested in. We've got, bear with me, knocked off my headphones there. There we go. We've got Victor Morales and Rene Alvarado in there. Alvarado is a really good trial horse, and he'll pull the rug out from a lot of these young prospects if they aren't the goods. Raul Carrillo back in there against Victor Ezequiel Rodriguez. Good to see him back in action. Avias Griffin against Julian Rodriguez at welterweight. Floyd Schofield taking on the Tevin Farmer challenge at lightweight as well. And that is a curious fight. Farmer very much in it. But to kind of see how Schofield looked after pulling out of that Shakur Stevenson fight in the Middle East. And then, if he could somehow win and get a stoppage over Farmer, that's a statement. Still waiting for that to happen. And then Holly Holm making a comeback. Interesting enough, I was a fan of hers from the boxing and MMA days. Still remember her stopping Rousey. That was a kick and a punch. And then Gilberto Ramirez against Yunel Dorticos. Dorticos obviously can punch. Hasn't been in with the greatest people as of late. Let's see if possible. Let's take a look and see if we can find anything in there that worthy of talking about that might make us say that Ramirez needs to worry. Ramirez. The question is always with him: is he started at 168 pounds, and when you're, I would get walloped by a guy like Dorticos. I don't know how that's going to go for you. Yeah, he's just been incredibly inactive here. So Dorticos, we all remember that great fight with Maris Bradis in 2020. That was a good battle, lost by a majority decision in a close fight. And then the next year he fought Jesse Bryan. The next year he fought Delvis Baracol. And he decided, let's take 2023 off. And he fought Alan Campa in June of last year. So it'll be a little more than a year out of the ring for Mr. Dorticos. And time's not on his side. I don't know how old he is at this point in time, but he's a really good puncher. There's always something to be said for that. That fight with Gassiev, that even went into the 12th before he was stopped. So I don't know. There's always that chance for a stoppage. If there's anything, I might be looking at that fight to not go the distance and seeing if there's some value on that bet, because I could see either guy getting stocked on here. Hey, right on. And we got Danny joining here. I don't know how long I was looking away from the screen, Danny. Just looking at my phone screen and rambling into the universe. But I appreciate you for stopping in here and joining me in the madness, or maybe just to laugh at me. You are on mute right now. Let me unmute you.
Apologies, Matt. Don't worry, I've not been waiting too long. Just listened to you, and I couldn't see you steer the show on your own, so I thought I'd come on and give you a bit of company.
Oh, I appreciate you. Well, yeah, I kind of went over. I've kind of gone over more or less everything that's happening. So, feel free to hit on anything I've talked about, except maybe save. We can take the time to talk about how stupid Jake Paul versus Chavez is on our own after you kind of give a roundup of anything I've talked about so far.
Yeah, so I was at the show in Birmingham last night. I was working there.
Fantastic.
So saw basically the entire main card. Really tough night for Canelo Yafai, goes without saying. I echoed what a lot of the nutters were saying in the chat, and a lot of people on social media were saying as well. I thought he probably could have been pulled out of there after 9 or 10 rounds. I thought it was pretty clear he wasn't going to win the fight.
They weren't doing him any favors, right? They weren't doing him any favors.
Like, what's going to you know, what's going to be achieved there. He did land good shots on Rodriguez, and understand Steve put it forward in the chat, was at 32 in the fight before a world title. And maybe if it's a bit earlier in his career, maybe they do pull him out. But I think, you know, whatever version of Galal Yafai that was in there, I don't think we see that version again. I think that's the type of fight, the type of beating that does take a lot away from you, and difficult to see where he goes, man. And the place was not busy last night. I think there was probably less than 1,000 people in there by the time the main event started. A lot of the big ticket sellers were on the undercard. So Eddie's not going to be breaking his back and breaking his bank account to invest in Galal to get him in a good position. He's probably already had the biggest financial fight he's going to have with that fight over Sonny Edwards. So you worry he's just going to be sort of left on the shelf, so to speak. So really tough from him, as I say, at 32 as a flyweight to see where he goes. Conor Walker, I agree with you. I'd like to see him in that Echo Esselman fight. I thought just looked so physically strong, and whilst Liam Taylor was probably the technically better fighter in there, he just had no match for the physicality of Walker, who, you know, is on a real run at the minute. I do think Esselman, that sort of level, that European level, you know, Esselman's established himself a lot above British level. It's probably the ceiling for Conor Walker. I think he's just a bit too easy to hit for, you know, you look at what Brian Norman done to Sasaki and think what the likes of he would do to a Conor Walker. But it's going to be a fun journey. They're talking about the Sam Egerton fight potentially up at 154, which would be an absolute war and a real treat for British boxing fans. Peter McGrail looked as good as anyone really can look against Leon at Beluda. I didn't understand the draw scorecard. I struggled to give Beluda more than 2-3 rounds max, but I'd like to see that Masood fight revisited. And who else was on the mid card? Tia Ayton, very impressive debut for an 18-year-old female fighter to get a highlight rate stoppage like that is something you don't see often. So it was an enjoyable night of boxing. I'm not sure how many people would have watched it both on TV and in the arena. Certainly it was a bit disappointing, but yeah, really enjoyed it.
You kind of got to feel bad for the Yafai family in that, like, they've just never quite been able to turn it over quite as with any of the boys. They've always been on the cusp, but always just kind of been turned away.
Nah, you're 100% right. And you go back to when Cal fought Chocolatito, and I think the narrative going into that fight was they were maybe getting Chocolatito at the right time. And
Yeah,
I remember,
Rugfasai just beat the shit out of him twice in a
yeah,
row.
yeah, and Cal was the bookie's favourite, I'm nearly sure, and yeah, got resoundingly beaten. They've all had really disappointing losses. I remember Gamal boxed Jason Cunningham, and he was an overwhelming favourite in that fight for the European, and yeah, got comprehensively beaten. You know, I know Galal's had his win over Sonny, but you know, with his achievements in the amateurs, if he doesn't win a world title, they'll view him as underachieving. And as you allude to, he was the sort of last hope. And obviously, they were all there, they were all ringside, and obviously any fighter's team, this family are devastated after a big loss, but I mean the looks on their faces, you're right, it's hard not to feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame that they never quite hit the top, but I mean it's still a wealth of achievement for them, and it might be one of those things where you know their children are the ones that bring it all the way home. You just don't know when it comes to these boxing families.
What do you think Galal should do? Because I saw people on social media, not it wasn't a widespread shout, but I did see it mentioned like potentially looking at retiring. And but you think he said one loss, a really bad loss, but there's what big fights are there realistically around for him in and around that weight? I mean, he's not going to get the BAM fight, which would go horribly for him based on last night. And how much of a push is he going to get for a world title, be that at flyweight or superfly? I just really struggle to see where he goes.
I think that the sizes are condensed enough down there that the old before I would retire if I was him, I think there's a decent money fight for him against Charlie Edwards.
Yeah, he'd probably have to come up to 118 for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I mean, honestly, what's the, and it's not like, you know, Charlie's, you know, got more sting than his brother, but he's not knocking heads into the first row either by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, you're 100%. It's not a fight you'd worry about for him health wise at all. But it just shows the lack of domestic interest around those weights, because normally when a fighter has a loss like this at, you know, at world level to an international opponent, there is like a sort of domestic opponent they can fall back on. You look at you know, when Josh Warrington fell short against Venado Lopez, you've got your Lee Woods, but there's just nothing like that for Yafai.
We get people that size have three choices in life, and they're not common in countries that are well nourished. They can become boxers, they can become jockeys, or extras in a Lord of the Rings movie. Well, beyond that, you have nothing.
Yeah, too late for him to become a jockey, you think?
You never know. He's obviously hanging to the weights. I think the max jockey weight is 118 pounds.
Yeah, well, he probably weighs a bit more, doesn't he? He looked a bit tight at the weigh-in, so maybe I have to see it a few.
Those six extra pounds do him a lot of good, I think. So there you go. We just figured it out. Next step for Yafai, you're to become a jockey, sir.
Did you? You touched on the Norman fight, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a brutal left hook knockout, and the head off the canvas. Those always worry you because that's a hard shot that wasn't thrown. It just happens.
Yeah, I actually thought there might have been a bit of underdog value in Sasaki as well. That was based off, I don't know if you remember, Matty, was it the Chica fight? I'm probably butchering his name for Norman, but he was really badly hurt early in that fight, and Sasaki for...
Oh, we lost you there. I don't know if you're in a weird coverage area or something.
Can you hear me?
There you are. I got you.
Yeah, so I thought there might have been a bit of value there based off that Norman fight with Chica a few fights ago, but he's a vastly improved fighter and seems to be improving all the time and look levels above Sasaki, who is obviously technically limited, but I thought would have more success than he did, and you'd be hard pressed to find a fighter at welterweight now you'd back with a great deal of confidence over Brian Norman.
Yeah, he's kind of gone because that Boca Chica fight back to back with the Quentin Randall fight, and then he found himself in a title fight, and we're like, what in the shit? Are we scraping the bottom of the barrel?
Yeah.
And then God, now I'm struggling to think of who he beat for the championship. But I mean, it was a 50. Santion, was it?
Yeah.
But it was like a real 50-50 fight with the books, and he just beat the shit out of him from pillar to post over 9 or 10 rounds, whatever it was, before it was mercifully stopped. And from there, his last fight, I couldn't tell you the guy's name off the top of my head, just one of them random defenses, but a totally different fighter. One of those guys that I think you're going to find that the confidence of becoming a title holder, and by whatever backdoor method it happened, that confidence of being a title holder is just going to make them a better fighter. And with Boots evacuating the division over by hook or by crook, Brian Norman's the number one guy.
Yeah, and I remember he got a lot of flack when Eddie Hearn made it public that him and his dad had turned down $1.5 million, and it was sort of unanimously seen as a duck when he turned down that offer to fight Boots. But maybe they were playing the long game. Maybe they thought, right, we're not ready for Boots now. It could be a damaging loss. It could be a loss that sets us back. But we're pretty fortunate to be in the position to have a world title. But long term, if he can establish himself as a big dog at welterweight, and that 1.5 million could look like chump change in a couple of years.
Well, and I mean, and I gotta say that Boots looked fantastic against Stanionis. I was
absolutely
shocked at how easy.
You still make Boots a big favorite over him.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me all in all. But yeah, it's welterweight. It's kind of a division that's lacking right now, and you got guys like an Alexis Rocha might be able to surprise you in a fight, or Raul Curiel. I think I just mentioned, or it might be Adrian Curiel. I get those two confused, but he was the one that was in a really good fight. I think it was with Rocha last year in a draw. Mexican Olympian. He might surprise some guys, but it's a wide open division, and it's crazy when you think, just about what we're thinking about 4 years ago, we were still talking about it in the sense of like you had, Crawford, Spence, Thurman, Porter, Danny Garcia was still knocking around there, and a handful of other guys, and now it's just freaking empty like like the oil fields emptied in a nothing town, and everybody went away.
Yeah, I think it says everything you need to know about the state of the welterweight division, and I don't mean to disparage the name of either of my countrymen, but the fact that Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan are going to fight for a world title.
I kind of like Paddy. I think I might have cut off there again. I think Paddy might actually be a quality fighter, and I think him and Norman down the stretch could actually be a good fight. Give it a year for them to get a little bit more experience. I kind of like that fight.
No, I think Paddy Donovan's got a high ceiling, but based off the fighters he's beat, he should not. In my opinion, he's very fortunate to have a fight for a world title, and you'd make him a massive favour to beat Crocker, wouldn't you, based off the first fight?
Oh yeah, you would have to assume so. That was just that was a travesty how that fight ended. What a maddening shit show that was.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's let me actually. I'm kind of curious. Let's check out the division, what ESPN has everybody at right now in the rankings. I'm kind of curious about that because it's you're struggling in a division like welterweight when these guys are. It used to be just off the top of your head, name the best welterweights, and now you don't have a clue off the top of your head. So Ennis is leaving the division. Barrios, obviously, they still have Stanionis up there. They're calling Haney a welterweight at this point in time. Giasov, who is waiting for a shot. Giasov might be a dark horse in the division. Yeah. They're calling Raleigh a welterweight at this point in time, and I think that might have been for some vacant junk when he fought Garcia, and then you got
the WBA regular, wasn't it? Raleigh won.
Yeah, and then you got Sissoko is coming in at 10, and he won his fight against Kavaliakis a month ago that just ended up just getting yanked off of television and just kind of disappeared into nothingness. But I mean, that's a really empty division, and with guys who were just in there because they just somehow weren't making 140 anymore, and they just kind of snuck in there. Barrios defending against Pacquiao. I mean, how fucking crazy is that?
Matty, what are your thoughts on Rowan Polanco, the Dominican fighter? I mean, he's someone I've seen people on social media maybe calling as a potential next fight for Brian Norman. I've only watched him once, and he's clearly very talented, but again, this would have been a building fight, I think I saw him in. But to me, it looked like there was maybe something missing. I think he's maybe just creeping into the top 10 with the ring at welterweight.
I'm trying to think of because he's one of those Dominican fighters who Samson Lukowicz signed. He has signed a good number of those Dominican fighters, but I'm trying to think. They just all kind of run together. But I'm trying to think of one who didn't have a bad chin.
Right.
And that always hangs with me as far as Dominicans of the past. I mean, because it's a pretty thin boxing history there as far as champions and stuff. Johan Guzman was Dominican. He wasn't chinny. He was just fat and lazy.
De Los Santos showing a questionable chin in a couple of fights too, anyway.
Didn't he get stopped somewhere along the way?
I remember didn't he get dropped by Valenzuela pretty heavy? I can't remember if he got stopped.
Let's find out. Thank God for high-speed internet and technology. Let's see here. Valenzuela. De Los Santos down once in round 2 and deducted point for hitting Valenzuela after he was down. Yeah, that was a crazy-ass fight. I had almost forgotten it. Yeah, so he was down in that one. I'm trying to think. There might have been another one. He lost to William Foster III in that one. I think he just got outboxed by Foster in that one. Honestly, that's a guy who's kind of avoided entirely. Funny enough, yeah, I think that might be what they're worried about with Polanco is his chin, but we'll see. Because I mean, isn't he more than 20 fights in at this point?
I think maybe 19. I think I was on his box record. I think he said 19. So yeah, you're not far off. He's fighting next month.
He's on that card with Xander Zayas, I think, isn't he?
Is that the Carrington card?
Yeah, it's the final Top Rank ESPN card.
Yeah, he's fighting Quinton Randall you mentioned earlier, I think.
Oh God! Hopefully he doesn't have another ugly fight like he did against Norman. Let's see here. Yeah, that fight against Maidana was all right, and Fabian's a pretty sturdy operator. He's not his brother. I mean, mind you, let's not get out into the weeds, but yeah, Polanco. It's we'll see. No, he's only got 16 fights so far.
16, sorry.
Yeah. He had that fight against a win against Cesar Francis. I rate pretty well. They had a nice little kind of rung there. Yeah, that I'll tell you what. A good win on there is his just basically blanking Tariq Zaina. That he was a really capable boxer. So that's kind of interesting on that one.
Just on the state of welterweight, Matty, with it being as open and as lacking depth as we were discussing, what sort of success do you think Ben could have if he's to move back down? I know the rematch sounds like it's all but done with Eubank, and maybe there's question marks over whether he'll make 147 again. But do you think he could become a proper player?
I know. If I had to. I think that Ben, I think his level of people he could beat would be like a Sasaki.
Yeah.
I think that's the most that he can hope for. If you look at his resume, basically every person he's beaten either comes with an asterisk because we're wondering if he was juicing, or they were on the decline, or far past it. And there's still guys I remember they wouldn't let Chris Algieri call one of his fights because of what he had said about him. And it's because he couldn't make sense of what he experienced in the ring with Conor Benn. And when you have a guy like Algieri who's been in there, with so many talented fighters, you kind of have, if he has some questions, he's like, that doesn't make sense. You kind of have to give that a little bit of weight in there. And then I don't know. I think that the best he'll ever look in his career was getting beaten over 12 rounds against a weight-drained Chris Eubank Jr.
I think you might not be too far wrong. I think it's one of my biggest sort of bugbears with modern boxing is, marketable fighters. They're moved past your domestic tests. I mean, I'm nearly sure Eddie's said in interviews multiple times that Conor Benn's well past British level. Why? Because as you say, you beat very faded, aging, former, champions, contenders. I mean, what's to say that Echo Esserman wouldn't beat Conor Benn? I think he very well could. I think Conor Walker could very easily beat Conor Benn, but he'll just be able to jump past those guys and get a world title shot based off name value and promotion. And yeah, I think the majority of casual boxing fans, based off what happened in that Eubank Jr. fight, would probably lap that stuff up and say, yeah, Conor Benn's a world level fighter. But I agree with yourself. We've not seen anything in terms of a victory to suggest that.
No, and we still it's tough really to judge what does that performance against Chris Eubank Jr. mean at a higher weight than he should have been. We'll give that one to him. But what state was Chris Eubank Jr. in? That's a great question. Was this a prime Chris Eubank Jr.? No. And if it's a less than prime Chris Eubank Jr. and we're rating that performance, what level was a prime Chris Eubank Jr.? He wasn't quite good enough to beat Billy Joe Saunders when he was still on the come up. He was good enough to beat what was left of Arthur Abraham. So I would have to say it's again, you talk about skipping levels. I'm still wishing that Conor Benn would try to win a British title. I think he should be fighting Echo Esserman.
Yeah, or Conor Walker. I think Conor Walker's got it currently, but and I think they're just nature of the business. They're never going to entertain those fights. I know Eddie's got Conor Walker, but Conor Benn. I mean, you'll be a better indicator of myself than this, but it feels like Conor Benn's got profile in the US now. It feels like a fight with a Devin Haney or a Ryan Garcia actually isn't beyond the realms of possibility.
No, and I think that you might, if you're in the mind of Eddie and everything that he's gone through trying to protect this guy, and you're just, it seems like they're just trying to recoup their cost in these big events. And yeah, maybe they have a rematch with Eubank Jr., maybe it doesn't materialize. But I think that Eddie is looking at X number of fights, be it 1, 2, or 3, and just cashing Conor Benn out and trying to get his investment back, because it had to be an utter freaking waste at this point, especially with the legal issues, and just how much do you value your time? I mean, how much of Eddie's time had to go into dealing with that bullshit? I mean, it had to be in the hundreds of hours.
Yeah, and I think one thing you got to remember in terms of how unlikely it is Eddie puts anything, Conor Benn in anything other than a mega fight is, especially based off what happened at the weekend, he is bereft of UK headliners. You got Johnny Fisher was defeated, obviously Galal Yafai, Anthony Joshua's on the way out. I mean, Dalton Smith's one they're trying. I've been to Dalton Smith fights. He's got a long way to go in terms of his commercial value before he's a financially lucrative commodity for Eddie. So, you compare what he used to have, 4 or 5 years ago when he was sort of in his pomp with Sky Sports, and he's still got 15, 16 UK dates a year he needs to fill at a minimum, and his UK stable's really as weak as it's ever been.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's just there's only so many fights out there that some of these guys can win, and unfortunately, I think they're seeing the ceiling for them. There's some divisions that are stacked, there's some that aren't, but unfortunately, when you're going through that stable, I think there's far more enticing domestic level fights than there are potential world champions and world championship fights within that stable.
Yeah,
I mean,
go on, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, is a guy is Dalton Smith? I mean, is he going to beat any of the champions of 140? I'm not dismissing him. I think he's a good enough fighter, but just as kind of questionable and generally bland as 147 is, I think 140 is that good and full of talent.
Yeah, well, they're trying to move towards this Puello fight, but that was all before Puello Matias was announced. So it'll be interesting if they're still as keen to go down that WBC route if Matias is to defeat Puello. I have an inclination to think they maybe won't be.
I tell you, that's it's interesting. I feel, and just to give people a heads up, follow my follies in the betting world. Is I don't know which one is gonna have to lose because I have a parlay going and I cleared 2 legs of it. I got because those were easy enough. I thought Nakatani to win was easy enough to pick. I kind of I thought Norman Jr. was one of the easier ones to pick myself. Hate to disagree with you there. I just kind of
Well,
thought,
you were proved right. You were proved very much correct.
Yeah, that was, and it was. I mean, and they weren't like hugely close. You saw the odds on those ones.
Yeah.
But I've got Matias over Puello coming up, and I took Shiraz over Berlanga as well. And I feel pretty good about those, but I feel like one of them has to kind of go down the shitter as it so goes with these bets of mine. But my feeling on Matias, it's just, we saw Pero do what Pero did, but Pero is a different animal than Puello. Puello, he kind of does the spoiler perimeter boxing thing, whereas what Pero did is he kind of got in Matias's face, landed a combination, and then he smothered him. Right, wasn't necessarily, boxing the perimeter, very much whatsoever. And so when I look at that fight, I don't look at it as, like, oh, Puello can do what Pero did, because I don't think he can. And I don't think that Puello is going to be able to have the firepower to keep Matias off him for that round. I kind of think that Puello is actually kind of going to play right into the hands of a guy like Matias, as good as he is. I don't know.
Yeah, I've actually never watched the Alberto Puello box. So is he strictly, outside on the back foot?
Yeah, he does that more often than not. His fight with Sandor Martin was all right. It was kind of weird to watch because both of those guys kind of like to go about their business in the same way, and it's hard figuring out who leads. And he just nicked it out in a close fight, but he he's just much more of a box and counter guy, and it's just Matias is just so on you, and he throws so many punches, and I don't think he has the firepower or the output to nullify what Matias does, because I think you got to hit hard, and you have to slow him down, and you have to make it sloppy and tie him up and stuff like that. But I think you have to punch a little bit harder, and you have to put them together to make that happen. But we'll see. I could be wrong, and Puello could win 10-2. as far as it goes. But yeah, and as far as Shiraz goes, I just think I think he's going to do better at 168 pounds. And I don't think Berlanga's that impressive. Like I think, yeah, he can do some of what Adames did, but I think Adames is a better fighter than Edgar Berlanga.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Shiraz will beat Berlanga. I think people forget that it was the knockdowns over Jason Quigley, a faded Jason Quigley, that got Berlanga the victory that night. When it was a pure boxing match, he did, look a bit lost at times. I think Shiraz, I agree with you, will be better at 168. And it was the head movement of Adames that just sort of bamboozled Shiraz. And, Berlanga doesn't move his head like that. He doesn't bob and weave and roll under punches. And yeah, I think it's a good fight for Hamza. I agree with you.
Yeah, Berlanga is just so like kind of chin in the air, come forward. He does a little bit of level changing here and there, but it's not. There's not a lot of what would I say? He's not the most dynamic fighter that I can think of in the division by any stretch. And we also have to consider like what we're seeing from this version of Canelo. Like Canelo seems to do just enough to make it to make fighters realize who they're in with, and then he can just coast for the last 8 rounds. He's basically managed to do that the last 3 or 4 fights. Charlo Munguia and Charlo, for sure, give or take. I mean, yeah, Berlanga was doing what he could in throwing, but it was just fucking easy for Canelo. It was too easy.
Yeah, I thought in that fight, Berlanga, in the second half particularly, had the mindset of, I'm going to do just enough to make it look like I've tried to win without really, going all out to try and take Canelo's head off. And I don't blame him. He got, dropped heavy in that fight, didn't he? But yeah, and especially when you factor in how Canelo looked against Skull, that's even though it was a defeat that Berlanga sort of paraded like a victory, it's a performance that maybe has the stock of it has declined. It hasn't aged the best.
No. There's I think a lot of this stuff from this era is not going to age well. For some, I don't know. I still have really. Let me ask the honest question. Because you different perspective from some of the guys who are usually on here. It's when you look at like that they're being a little bit harder on some of these turkey cards with the drug testing and things of that nature. And you look at that weekend over Cinco de Mayo, all of those fighters turning in those substandard output performances. Doesn't it raise the question, like how many of these sons of bitches were juicing and what little they can do when they're really being checked hard for it possibly? I mean, isn't that a very lingering question when we put everything together?
Yeah, of course it is. Matt, I've had this conversation a few times, and obviously you've got to be careful how you phrase it. But these top level fighters with the financial resources to employ, top of the range doctors, and the nature of drug testing is that the doctors and the ones who are looking to bypass those are always that sort of one step ahead. And I'm of the opinion that it's rife at the top end of the sport, and it's a good point you make. It has been something that these Saudi-backed cards have set their stall out to do, because obviously they don't want anyone popping on their cards, do they? They've got enough image issues to contend with. And when you look at Ryan Garcia is the glaring example of the point you're trying to make. I think if people who work in the industry, they can't maybe be as honest as they'd like, but if you got them in a private room, I don't think you'd find too many who would disagree that in all likelihood that was a fighter who was maybe you were seeing how much performance enhancing drugs can enhance performance and how much they can detract them when you're not on them. So yeah, it's with, you see how frequently fighters test positive. It's always something you've got to factor in, particularly when they do go on to look so flat.
Yeah, and for the American listeners we have, I just worry, and I know this is kind of going out of left field, but kind of thinking just in the realm of how things will look in the long run. I kind of feel like this era might be burdened in the same way that the steroid era was burdened in Major League Baseball, and yeah, I don't know. We shall see how this all unfolds. And I hope for anyone who see our thumbnail up there, That one muffified pick was provided to us by our man Damo there. A little bit of Turkey, Canelo, and Crawford action there as they got together for a meal. A little bit of an odd way to go about promoting the fight. In what is a combat sport where we want a little bit of bad blood, we want some mean intention, getting together over a nice plate of some rice and shawarma. I don't know if that's the way to go.
No, it's not the way to go, and it's so bizarre. I was debating this with someone. So Canelo and Crawford, this whole time, this fight's been earmarked after an announcement. It's been extremely respectful. That dinner took that to a new level entirely. But then you've got this shove at the press conference, just like an hour ago, a couple hours ago. How can you expect anyone to believe that shove was born out of any real animosity after that image has gone out of them breaking bread in Turkey? Just make your mind up on what the promotion's going to be.
It's all wag the dog bullshit. It's no different than politics. It's just like something to distract and, build up public support and shit. It's all bullshit at the end of the day. I just want to see him at this point get in the ring and I'm going to be there in Vegas. It'll be interesting for an afternoon show. I mean, because you're talking it could go any way, but like September in Vegas at 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon out there. I mean, it could be 100 degrees. That's going to be a hot son of a bitch out there. And I'm the closer this gets, the more interesting it becomes to me, just because the size difference isn't that much. I don't think as much as playing into Canelo's hands as usually might be, because I don't necessarily know that he's as A side as he is usually an A side. I mean, and the one thing that you could say, people might argue, well, he got the better end of the stick against Golovkin on that for sure, but Golovkin wasn't an American. I think that plays in somewhat in the crowd reaction and things of that nature. Like, I don't think Bud's dead in the water on this one. How are you feeling? Is this fight a complete charade, or is this a legitimate grab at history for Bud Crawford?
No, I definitely don't think Crawford's without a chance in this. And to sort of go on to your point about the Golovkin fight, that was a fight when Canelo was still, obviously he was a star, but the money to be made from Canelo Alvarez was still there to be made. There was still a product to protect, that he's gone on to make a lot more after that fight. That's not the case now. Canelo's well down the back nine, so there won't be that interest from his backers and broadcasters and the business of boxing as a whole to protect anyone in this fight. I think it's Canelo's decline's been well talked about, and it's clear to see. Crawford is probably not the best Terence Crawford either, if we're being honest. This is someone who started at lightweight and is getting into his late 30s now. But
no, I think the best Terence Crawford was the one that fought Sean Porter, and that was a fight, and not necessarily he was absolutely dominant, but just in the fact that he felt he was up. His corner said, "You might be down," and he said, "What?" And he went out there and he just fucking stopped him. Like that's. I thought that Terence Crawford was a different level.
Yeah, it was that time, wasn't it? It was Porter, it was Avanesian, Kelbrook. That was sort of the best Crawford. I think people maybe say he didn't look as good at Madrimov, but I don't put that down to a size thing. I think Madrimov's just a really sort of awkward style. It's a style he wouldn't have seen before. First fight at the weight. He probably knew that coming through it, there was the potential of this fight with Canelo. So I think even if it isn't perhaps the best Terence Crawford, I think it's a Terence Crawford who's closer to his prime age-wise in terms of miles on the clock than it is a Canelo. He's closer to time by a considerable margin too.
Which is weird because Canelo's a younger guy than Bud. He just, again, you're right, many more miles on the ring clock.
Yeah, well, Canelo's been fighting pro since he was 15, and you factor in the amount of camps he must have had, and Canelo's not defensively irresponsible, but he's not a Floyd Mayweather in terms of someone who's not going to be taking damage in camps and of course in fights. And whilst I don't think punch resistance is going to come into this, I don't see Terence Crawford hitting Canelo with anything that's going to trouble him or buzz him or come close to stopping the fight. I think it's more the ability to get your shots off, the second, third, and fourth gear that we haven't seen from Canelo in some times. I think he will need that against Terence Crawford, and once you've not used it for so long, there are going to be those questions of whether it's still there.
Yeah, we're wondering here. Oh, right on. It does wandered in too. Wonderful, wonderful. You're wondering with it. It's just like this is the one thing that if I feel very, very confident about Crawford being a different one, it's in the fact that we've seen a lot of these guys go in there running their mouths, and then at some point they get hit, dropped potentially by Canelo, and they just shut off. I think even if he touches canvas, I don't think you're going to see Crawford quit in the ring and quit on himself and just try to get the payday. Like I think it's just as likely that you'll see Crawford win as you'll see him get knocked out. Now I'd call it that.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you saw the clip of, it was a very strange question actually from the press conference where, was it Max Kellerman or someone asked them like who would win in a street fight, and Crawford would say like, you know what I do, there's not a man on this planet I'd say is going to whip me, and that's the attitude he carries into his fights. He's got incredible self-belief, as does Canelo, but all fighters, of course, have got amazing self-belief to reach the level that they do in the sport, at the top level, at world championship level. But it's maybe the first time since Golovkin that Canelo will have faced someone who's got that, that same level of ego, and ego that's justified as he does.
Yeah, I like the confidence that Crawford has. It's a different kind of confidence. Yeah, it's the kind of confidence that I think only an undefeated fighter can have. But Des, the difference with this undefeated fighter in Terrence Crawford is it's not an undefeated fighter who hasn't been there. He's traveled the weight classes and things of that nature. I mean, on an experience level, Canelo might have the edge, but I mean, it's only by a hair.
Good evening, Matty. How are you, mate?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I hope your brother had a fantastic birthday, sir.
Well, he's not talking to me because I've cut out early because I felt sorry for you. I heard you was on your own. Is that right?
What's that for? Yeah, I was on my own for
Yeah,
was on
yeah.
for 10 minutes. Danny jumped on with me here, so we're getting through. We've it's been a patchwork, but it's going to turn into an amazing quilt, I say.
Well, I've not heard any of the pod. I literally just found myself a quiet space in the house to jump on and just contribute to a degree. The next couple of months, I'm in and out of the country, so if you can put up with me bouncing in, bouncing out, and we can get a few more other people coming in and conversing with us, that'd probably help us out a little bit. But I've not listened to the pod up to this point, so I assume you're talking about Canelo and Bud. Is that right?
Yeah, because they're doing the press tour and all that stuff right now and getting together for wonderful meals. And Turkey even took off his sunglasses for the event, so that's how you knew it was a big deal.
I mean, I've kind of forgotten the question you asked me, so you can probably go back on that. But just
the experience gap between the two, it's not that much. A bit to Canelo, you might even say, even vaguely younger, but the experience gap is almost negligible.
In what respects do you mean, mate? In the experience gap, what you think that the guys have fought, the level they've fought at, the big nights they've had?
Yeah, I would say that Canelo's probably, and I would say that would be the gap, would be that Canelo's had more big nights. He's had more of these large attendant shows and things of that nature, whereas as Crawford kind of had to just trudge through it to be able to get these opportunities so much. Whereas Canelo, if you remember, even before Mayweather, he was a big attraction, and they were building him into this huge star at that point in time. I mean, he was on Mayweather undercards for a while, and then he just kind of blew up, and he was 21 years old when all of that happened. But after that, like he did some amazing things, but he has a lot of light touches on his resume, and every time he's been in with a top or true top quality operator, it's been a very close fight.
Right, so I hear what you're saying. I think Teofimo Lopez reminds me closest to Roberto Duran of all the active fighters, maybe Tank to a degree, in that they're so athletic, so savage, so natural. But in terms of development,
liberal use of the N-word.
Yeah, which we don't use on here, obviously. But yeah, correct. And they've got that they're a little bit of a crackerjack. They're off the plot and Duran was the same. But in terms of development and picking out a kid from a very young age and guiding him through what is probably the hardest sport of them all, from the age of 15 all the way up to now, and dominating multiple weight classes and beating Hall of Famers along the way. I think Canelo is the closest we've got to Duran in terms of development. They've done this with Duran. They picked him out at 15, 16, and they gradually took him through them small hall shows in Panama, which they did with Canelo in Mexico. Then they brought him over to America. Then it was gradual stages through the card until he was a headline act, and he hits a demographic, he sells tickets, and he's a global superstar now. And it was all built on his culture and his people. I think that experience that Canelo's got far outweighs anything Bud's got. I don't think Bud gets close in terms of professional development and professional experience under the lights in big fights. However, I think Bud comes with something a little bit unique in that I think he's a natural talent. I think he's a raw, tough, hard man. And I think he's got very good technical ability. So he reminds me a lot of, he's more Tommy Hearns than I think Sugar Ray Leonard, because he doesn't have to be as slick. He's somewhere between Tommy and Marvin in the sense that he's a real hard man. He can
All
punch
those
a
boxing personalities I talked to after he fought Spence, they think he's as close to Marvin Hagler as we've seen since.
Yeah, so I kind of pitched him between Tommy and Marvin, but I wouldn't argue with that. Yeah, if you fancy he's more Marvin Hagler, I'd go along with that. I can see that in him.
The switch hitter who was kept at arm's length because he was so much better than anyone wanted to admit.
And we don't see so much razzmatazz. We don't see so much flamboyancy with Bud. What we see is a really sound, very good technician who's as hard as a coffin nail, who really understands the fundamentals of boxing, knows how to break you down physically and mentally. And look, if I'm being honest though, and look, Bud's had some really big nights, and Bud stepped up every time. And I'm going back to when he came over to Scotland and fought Ricky Burns, and after Ricky Burns, he had Gamboa, and then after that, he sort of swum in shallow water, but then he sort of stepped up in hard fights against Indongo, Amir Khan, Kell Brook, Sean Porter was the big one. And then, of course, it all culminated in the Errol Spence fight. I think the Spence fight showed us what a monster Bud can be when he has to be. When he has to press the button, we get a very special type of animal. If you take yourself back to just before the Spence fight, I think an awful lot of boxing fans, if not the majority of hardcore boxing fans, thought Spence would be too good and too big, but that was stood on its head on the night. So I think, in answer to your question, I'm sorry I've gone around the edges a little bit. I'm trying to make up for being late. I think Canelo brings big fight experience. I think Canelo brings that wonderful professional development from the age of as being a 15-year-old pro, working his way through Mexico, over to America, boxing on the big cards, working his way up the cards. The guys he's fought, the weights he's travelled through. I think Bud's done that to a lesser degree. His resume is not close to Canelo's, but I think this one could all be about timing. I can't pick a winner just yet. They've got a long way to go on that. But I think if anything's going to get Canelo out now, it will be the timing. But if anything's going to catch Bud out, it could be the size. But we've got to see the build up of this one, how they train, how they prepare, and that fight week and that weigh-in. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, it's all that, and I'm looking for, if Crawford comes in around 100, like right around the weight limit, I'm going to have less faith in him winning than I do now. I want to see him coming in at 164, 165, trying to have a real speed advantage. And if he comes in higher than that, I feel like he's I would never say that he's phoned in his camp in any way, because I don't think he's that guy. But I think they're thinking the wrong strategy at that point in time. But that's just my opinion. But Danny, here's a question for you, and it's, if you think through Canelo's career, okay, and you take in fighters who were at the top, in kind of like towards the top of their weight class, and close to their prime. is there a single one who you thought that Canelo beat soundly? Because I'm thinking about some of these fighters going back, like when you're thinking about some real decent guys he fought. Austin Trout, very close fight with the open scoring that was absolutely ridiculous. He lost to Floyd Mayweather. He had a very, very close fight with Erislandy Lara, which many people thought he lost. He had a very close fight with Miguel Cotto. He had the first two fights against Golovkin were incredibly close. He lost to Dmitry Bivol. So, I mean, when you're talking about real top class operators who he has faced, can you think of anyone who really blown out, Danny?
No, and it's a point I've made to friends and other, boxing fans before. And to sort of elaborate on what you've been saying, you look at that run at 168 and, he couldn't have, done any better. But Billy Joe Saunders' best days were at middleweight. Really, I thought the best version of Billy Joe Saunders was at middleweight. The performance against Lemieux, the win over Andy Lee. Callum Smith, you probably wouldn't put him in as a top bracket fighter, and again has looked better up at 175 than he did at 168. Caleb Plant the same, a good fighter, a good world champion, but particularly after recent events, how good, as you say, the controversy he's had and the wins over the fighters who would be more recognised as top level. And he's obviously been, you don't want to say carefully matched, and cherry picking's been thrown about, but he's the Kovalev fight as well. That was a very faded Sergey Kovalev. So no, it's a good point you make, Matty. And
Who arguably only won 6 of the first 10 with him.
Oh, Kovalev, I had winning that fight on the cards, and then he just fell apart, and God knows what Sergey was doing in the weeks and months up to that fight. But no, it's a good point you make, and I'd be inclined to agree with you. He doesn't have a win over an elite fighter without some sort of asterisk beside it, be it weight, be it that he didn't actually win the fight. So yeah, I agree with you.
And look at that. Now Eamon Khan has joined us too. Went from me being alone, like a guy just floating on a lifeboat, getting off the Titanic by himself, to being surrounded by friends on an iceberg of love. Ames, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Did someone send out the bat signal? or is it the fat signal?
If this is the fat signal, it'd be me who was coming, man. Fuck, I've been putting them on.
What are we talking about? What's the topic? I'm not tuning in.
Right now, since the press tour is going on, we're getting in a little bit of Terrence Crawford and Canelo talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we were just going over the idea, and maybe you have an answer on this. Danny, just after I asked him, can you think of a single fighter that Canelo fought who was a top-class fighter near their prime, who Canelo beat soundly, and he couldn't think of a name?
So before I get into that, I don't know if Danny's mentioned or if you've covered the Galal Yafai fight night, but
we did.
Danny might be taking he's planted the seed for the first step towards maybe taking the Oracle mantle from Steve Wellings, because Danny had informed me that he'd seen Rodriguez as a very, very, very live dog, and maybe even the one to cause an upset at the weekend, and he pretty much called it to a T. So I don't know if he'd been too humble and not let you guys know, but certainly I'll let you behind the veil and let you know that Danny called that one pretty much near perfect. I mean, it was a little bit of a fluke, maybe. He's got a few more predictions to go to call something to get to that Oracle status, but certainly a prospect to watch out for. In terms of Canelo opponents that he's fought near prime, would you say Lara?
No, who he beat soundly. He and that was contention.
Well, yeah.
That was a split decision, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cotto, close fight.
Yeah, I'd say that argument's fair with Canelo, but I mean, when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, I think what about Plant?
I don't think you could call him like a true top class operator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Could you honestly say that like on any reasonable scale that Plant is more than a B+ fighter?
No, sure, but he was. Yeah, I mean, okay. Well then,
Same with Billy Joe. He's kind of a B+ guy.
so the other thing would be, I can't present you this argument because I personally don't think he notched those 2 victories. But there are some that are very certain that he'd beaten Golovkin at least once. Once surely in the third fight, but at least a second time across those first 2 fights. So would that, for people who'd back Canelo winning, be enough?
I don't know. Someone said in there, David Palmer said Jacobs, but wasn't that fight close too?
It's a close fight, but I wouldn't say that. I don't think Jacobs was. I would say Golovkin was more close to his peak than Jacobs was. But the way I see the Golovkin fight, the first 2, I am dead. Even though they're close, I'm dead set on how that fight went. So if anyone offers the opposite with Canelo and they're dead set on it, then maybe you could say Golovkin would be that prime fighter, and I would count certainly Golovkin as a elite level fighter at that period of time.
So you'd only say the second fight, though. You like most people think Golovkin won the first fight. So I mean, would you say that? Like you'd say, yeah, maybe Canelo's second fight. I thought he won that widely.
If I still think Golovkin won, but if you're backing and saying that Canelo did win, then it'd probably be that would be the one that you'd pick. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think there's very many people that thought those fights were very decisive, other than the third one.
Oh
So,
no, I'm so dead set on those first 2 fights being in Golovkin's favor. Like I'm unwavering in that.
Yeah, there you go. And so you got to play a real devil's advocate role to get there. I just don't see it. Des, do you got one?
Well, no, I listened to what everyone said, and Danny made some really good points, and you can't argue what Danny said. There's always an asterisk to the name of a lot of the guys Canelo's boxed and beaten, but I think we probably hold Canelo to a much higher standard with him being top pound for pound, top 3, top 5 for such a long period of time. For someone is such a crowd puller, a network darling, someone that's the flag carrier of the sport, we probably expect a Marvin Hagler type run or a Ray Leonard type run. We probably expect the type of Alexander Usyk type run. What I would say about Canelo is, before he'd won a world title, Carlos Baltimore, Lovemore and Do, Matthew Hatton, Ryan Rhodes, Gomez, Kermit Citron, Shane Mosley, Josecito Lopez, Austin Trout. Then he got the Floyd fight. That's a really good run. Now, he wasn't, them guys weren't meant to beat him, but that's a real solid run for a kid that ain't won a world title yet. After Floyd, he fought back-to-back fights with Triple G. That says an awful lot about someone. The first one was a draw. He went back in with him in immediate return. I still think Callum Smith up at super middle, 27-0, and the way he dealt with Callum says a lot about Canelo.
He was
Now,
Des, he was drained and on 4 weeks' notice on that fight.
Fair enough. I just think that when I think about guys like say Nazim Hamed or maybe Ricky Hatton, for example, they had wonderful careers, but I could probably give you half a dozen guys they didn't fight each. I can't quite give you them half a dozen with Canelo. At whatever weight throughout his career, he's always fought the best guys, all barring Benavidez. That's the one we've not seen. I think with Canelo, the bar's so high, we probably hold him to a much higher standard. I do agree with Danny, though. I'm not trying to flip-flop here. There's an asterisk to an awful lot of guys he beat in terms of they was out of their weight class. As Ames just said, they was given short notice, or they was over the hill and they was past their best. So there is that to be said about Canelo. And if he beats Bud, we're probably going to say that he dragged one of the best fighters in the game up a division he didn't belong in. But I just think maybe with Bud, with Canelo, we hold him to a much higher standard. But I think when you look at the resume, asterisks or no asterisks, and I do agree with that point, he's got some absolute killers on his resume, Hall of Fame fighters. And sometimes a la Vladimir Klitschko, a la Vitaly Klitschko, and even a la Tyson Fury, sometimes you can only beat the guys that are around at the time. But when I look at the guys he has fought, and I'm particularly draw back on the run before he fought Floyd and the back-to-back fights with Triple G, that does tell me a lot about Canelo, that he's a fighter first. So I do agree with the point that it's maybe not a killer run like Marvin Hagler had in that 8-9 year spell. And it's not quite a Floyd Mayweather career. But I think it's a respectable career with very good names on it.
No, Canelo's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and let me tell you, his there's no problem with the depth of his resume. It's just really odd. Like,
sorry, mate, can I just make this final point? You know, I like interrupting you. I'm sorry, mate. We talk about Cole Frotch's run. We talk about how good Joe Calzaghe was. Well, Canelo's run's probably a lot better than Calzaghe's, and equally good, if not better than Cole Frotch's. So I just think we hold him to a much higher standard because he's such a good fighter. He's such a high-profile fighter, and it has been for such a long time.
No, he's first. Like I said, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he could have had 3 or 4 of those fights go the other direction, and I still think he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer based on his depth of resume. He was still had some great victories on there. However, you might slice it up. Right now, he only has a defeat to Bivol and Mayweather on there. You know, the big deal. It's a lot of people have defeats to Mayweather and Bivol on there. It's just it's odd. Like I would say the odd thing about Canelo's career when you think about a lot of these fights is it's like if Leonard had a half dozen fights that were as contentious as the Hagler fight. Because I mean, there are that many fights of his that people argue up and down that he might have lost on those. It's just, I don't know. He's had one of those careers, but it's a stacked career, as you said. He's fought everybody. But anyways, it's a very exciting a time for fight. I hope they make some good undercard fights on that one, but we shall see.
Matt, just one thing I wanted to say as well, and I've been a detractor of Canelo more than some people. You can pick holes in any elite fighter's resume, even like the top fighters around nowadays. You could look at Dmitry Bivol, you would say Canelo, yeah, he had no business at 175. Beterbiev, yeah, he was nearly 40 years of age. Inouye's biggest name on his resume is Denaire, who was, well over the hill. You can do it with any fighter. I think the reason Canelo gets perhaps more scrutiny is because he's been a much bigger commercial draw than any of those fighters, and his commercial draw and his pull was sold around being the best fighter in the world, and that's why I think people perhaps scrutinize his resume perhaps a bit more than other fighters at that level.
Well, and also people will scrutinize your resume more if you've popped positive as well.
Yeah, that too.
So, before we move on to one last final, I guess, preview, Des, Ames, you guys have anything to say regarding the Yafai fight and that card, or the Norman Jr. knockout over Sasaki?
Des, you want to go first?
No, I'll let you go first, and I can nick some of your lines. Go on.
You're the one with the lines, pal, not me.
We're doing lines.
Well, no, definitely none of them. Not for me anyway. Haram behavior, that is. I'm just going to pull up the card quickly just to remind myself. I didn't get to see too much from the card because I was coming back from Riyadh and then driving back to Birmingham, but I kept an eye out on a few things. First of all, just a quick line on Tia Ayton. Of course, Eddie Hearn has a raft of prospects and he pushes them to the hilt and obviously says a lot before that he's sprinting before they're even walking. But for a lady to come out with a knockout in when the women's side of things, there isn't too many knockouts in the debut. It certainly kind of pulls your attention. So keep an eye out for Tia Ayton. Spider Sullivan, once again, I think he's due now. Step up, looks good. Probably couldn't find the finish, and normally is a good finisher. But from what I found, he looked comfortable. and is ready to get that step up and start looking for some versions of titles. I missed out on Visioli, McGrail, and Conor Walker, which are 3 good fights to talk about, but I couldn't say too much. But I can get into that main event with Yafai, and I thought it was a hard watch, definitely, because he got buzzed straight away in that first round, and but for good foot placement from Yafai, which is his fundamentals from what he's learned in the amateurs, he would have hit the canvas, but he didn't have his legs under him from that moment, and you could see he was trying to get those legs back, but it wasn't just a matter of legs either. It was a matter of he didn't have the punch power to keep off Rodriguez from him, and he sort of run out of ideas and maybe faith in that what he was going to put out wasn't going to get answered by 2, 3, 4 shots. And he spent a lot of time occupying himself with his defense, which meant he couldn't come back with anything. And I think it's one of those things, it's a recurring problem with British fighters with the sparring and getting out to other countries. And normally you wouldn't think that would be too much of an issue with someone who's been in the GB setup, because the whole MO is to get round to lots of championships and fight different styles. But there's something about Mexican fighters, whether it be the rhythm to fight, which we do the 1-2, 1-2. They're going in with a 1, and there's in the middle of that your sequence. There's another one, and there's a right hand in there as well. They just have a different tempo and beat about them, and it's a real problem for British fighters. And that Yafai befell the same thing and didn't have an answer for it. And you have an experienced corner in Rob McCracken. You have a trusted trainer that you've been with for so many years of Rob McCracken, and they couldn't find an answer. They begged for Yafai to hold. He couldn't do it. It came to the point where Yafai couldn't exercise or affect the instructions that McCracken was giving to him, and he was taking a beating, and there were the spots of reprieve or even a bit of success kept coming fainter and fainter, and they should have pulled him out. That's the bottom line with it. They should have pulled him out. I don't know for what they kept him in for, because Yafai wasn't going to find that big shot. He's not that type of fighter to find that big shot.
If Nakatani didn't knock him out, they needed to have some fucking sense about what they're asking from him.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think if Rob could have it back, and the commentary they said as much, that he had the towel in his hand. And I think if he could retread his steps, he would probably throw the towel in, because the effects of that you hope it won't, but boxing is what we know it is to be, and that will have its effect later down the line. But there was made mention, I didn't hear it on the DAZN commentary itself because I was in and out of things, but there was apparently this allusion that was made, or alluded, that maybe this Francisco Rodriguez isn't fighting on a fair playing field. Now that remains to be seen, and any drugs tests we hope will be passed, and there's legitimate victories had. But he didn't tire.
They shouldn't be saying that in the broadcast, though.
No, I agree. I agree. So that's fine. I agree. And to be honest with you, I quite like that bit of directness and brutalness about it. But you're right. Maybe you shouldn't be saying that
if the output was the other way, they wouldn't be saying, "Is Yafai natural here?"
Possibly.
That's a great point.
You're probably right. But in the context of this conversation, we're not on a broadcast, and I looked at that, and I'm kind of thinking, we're hardcore boxing fans here. We know more than just someone looking at it and thinking, "Whoa, this guy's an athlete." There's 2 athletes in the ring there. There are 2 fighters in tip-top shape there, and this guy hasn't taken a step off, or there's been no real discernible drop in his performances, and that's a red flag, the way I see it. But if he passes the test, then he passes the test. And I'm not saying that in any sort of favor towards a British fighter, like Danny's kind of saying as well. But it's just one of those things where when you know what goes on in the sport, and you're in the sport for long enough, you see it and you think more about it. And yeah, if he passes, I'm not saying he's not going to pass the test. I'm not saying anything like that, but it's one of those things where you've got to think about it a bit more deep than what you just see in front of you. So, and then if anything comes of the consequence of that fight with Yafai gets viewed in different eyes. But yeah, no, we won't know until anything more comes out of it. And again, I'm not saying that it is the case, but it's just one of those things that makes you think about those type of things, because there's not many athletes I can think of that can exhibit that type of display at that age. But yeah, going back to Yafai specifically, they needed to take that fight at 32, looking to capture a world title. And I don't know how long the rebuild will take in Birmingham, which is an area which is being rebuilt itself. So if Eddie is committed, or Matchroom Boxing is committed to putting and investing and putting these cards into Birmingham, then there'll be a route back for Yafai, but they need talents like Yafai. They need talents like Spider. They need talents from other areas nearby to get up faster, because there won't be too many more opportunities for big headline fights unless he signs other talent if they become free agents. And obviously Ben Whittaker is the main one there. But until you have someone like that, you need to get them in positions. Otherwise, the interest starts to dwindle. But yeah, I do think the underlying thing here is that fight should have been called off before it finished. And I didn't see the sense of Yafai seeing the final bell other than a little bit of pride.
No, yeah, we're with you 100% on that one. Des, your thoughts?
Well, I think they rolled the dice, obviously. Yafai is a novice compared to Rodriguez. Perhaps Yafai's not fought the type of guys that you need to fight over 12 that gives him the experience to fight that sort of fight last night. He punched with a puncher, and he opted to stay in the pocket, and he allowed Rodriguez to shut him down when Yafai tried to get out of the pocket. I think the warning signs were very early, weren't they? You know, Rodriguez come out fast, and to take Aim's point, and we won't talk about it until perhaps this time next week, and it's all disclosed. But the red flag for me was Rodriguez, his intensity. He started fast, and he got faster and faster and stronger. And at 32, that is quite unique. And what the commentary said last night, I agree with Danny. They shouldn't be voicing that, but they were caught up in it, and they're ex-fighters themselves. And in that Yafai dressing room last night after the fight, everybody would have been talking like that. It was it's a big red flag, Rodriguez. But that's not to say that he's taken anything. But it just, much like we saw it with Conor Benn, much like we've seen with other fighters in the past, it just, at first glance, it just looks a little bit sus. But I'm sure there'll be a sample going over the next 2 or 3 days, and I'm sure the McCrackers will be on it, and it'll all will come out in the wash. And please God, there's nothing untoward. Back onto the fight, though, I think they got their tactics wrong. And when you've got a 9-0 fighter who's relatively inexperienced with that type of fighter at this level, I think they chose the wrong fight. And something about Mexicans, they don't really have an elite amateur program that's extensive. You know, their kids go into the pro gyms very early, and they learn to look after themselves. And, you know, to pick out someone like Jorge Linares against Kevin Mitchell, they can both have a ding-dong. They can have a really good fight, not a lot in it. But when you look at them at the end, one's hasn't got a mark on him, and one's got puffy eyes and a broken nose. It's not going to be the Mexican kid. And they know how to look after themselves. Now, I know Rodriguez got a cut last night, but he knew how to look after himself when the exchanges were happening. He knew how to look after himself in that pocket. It's just slight angles. And I don't know if it was, I think it was, you said it, Matty. Aim said it. They throw a routine combination, then they throw one up or one around. They don't breed their young kids like Lewis Edmondson. They breed them like that. They breed them like Martinez. They're buzzsaws. They really enjoy being in the mixer. And last night we saw two kids that opted to go into the mixer, but one wasn't cut out for it. He fought the wrong type of fight. I thought he'd done really well to get through round 8. He was really in trouble, and I thought the fight should have been stopped long before the end. On the face of it, on paper, really good result for Rodriguez. He had a really good career, fought the top guys, and acquitted himself really well. And on the basis of what I saw last night, he deserved the win. But I will be interested to see what this week throws up at us in terms of results and testing results.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I kind of harp on the idea. A lot of these high output fights are at the lower weights. Lungs are kind of uniform throughout in size throughout humans with little variance. So if you got a smaller body, same size lungs, you're getting a little bit more out of that, and you can just be a little bit more high motor at the end of the day.
And
so
the last point I'll make on that, so I don't want to talk about Rodriguez like he's guilty. That's not fair. It's just boxing people talking, and they would have been talking like this in the change room last night. They'd all been talking about it when the mics went off. It was there to be seen. He was a very intense, high energy output fighter, and he got more intense and more strong as the fight went on. But he's not committing no crime yet in terms of rules and regulations and what he may not have taken. But what I would say, not only do you look at the kid that's winning the fight, or you suspect, you've got to look at the way he's beating the fight out of his opponent. And whenever there's a fiddle, however it may come in boxing, whether it's wraps or tampering with gloves or taking PEDs, it's how they beat their opponent up that's normally a red flag. And last night, Yafai got really beaten up. Now that, as some of the lads suggested, that might be because he opted the wrong tactics. He fought the wrong style against the wrong kid. Absolutely right. But, we're not casting any aspersions here, but we are opening this up for a conversation. And the way Rodriguez boxed last night and the type of beating he put on Yafai, there was a couple of red flags last night, if I'm being honest.
interesting. Well, let's hope that everything turns out on the up and up. This sport has had far too many of these positive tests. But anyway, I wanted to close this one out with also, I want to thank real quick. I made sure not to take this down. Our man Damo, Captain Casual, throwing another $4.99 in there. God love you. Starting a GoFundMe to commence the canonization of Maddie for his unwavering commitment to holding a lighter to the knackers of this sport. Oh, God. I don't know how unwavering it is at times, but we appreciate you so much, dude. And we also appreciate your AI artwork, as folks can see on the screen there. But I wanted to close this out. So we talked about the other fights on the card, but we have the Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Fight coming up, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it, because of course these are the stupid things that if you put them in a hashtag, they draw people in. So what are you gonna do? But it's a cruiserweight fight. I don't know how it's gonna go. Chavez has lost everyone up to including Anderson Silva at this point in time, but I just don't know what to think about this. You hear rumors of fighters saying that basically they're paid not to win against Paul. I don't know if I'd go that far, but at this point in time, Danny, are these Jake Paul fights just a farce? And is it kind of disappointing that there's a few decent boxing matches sitting on this undercard? Because I mean, we really want nothing to do with it. I don't want to pay for this. I'm not gonna pay for this.
Yeah, the main event doesn't do a great deal for me. I mean, on the face of it, if you didn't take a deep delve into it, you would think a former world champion in Chavez, who's, I think he's still under 40, is he? And not massively outsized. You would, I think this is the man to embarrass Jake Paul, to stop Jake Paul. But you mentioned the Anderson Silva fight where he was beat, and I was actually at his fight on the Jake Paul Mike Perry undercard against another former MMA fighter. I think his name is Uriah Hall, and he ran really close, and that was really low level fare, and just the life Chavez has lived outside of the ring. I mean, we don't need to go too deep into it, and that sort of always feeling you have of these Jake Paul fights that you also alluded to, Matty, that the big business is going to win. You don't know what conversations are had behind the scenes, whether it's contractual or gentlemen's agreements and so have you. But I think we all just get the feeling that maybe everything's not always on the up and up, and that we're going to see Jake Paul knock Julio Cesar Chavez out, maybe at best get carried to a decision, and the main event does very little for me. But as you said, there are some fights in the undercard that are worth watching. I think there is a degree of interest for Zurdo Ramirez versus Dordicos, Floyd Schofield, Tevin Farmer's a fantastic fight, so I will watch it. But yeah, the main event's not for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, I'm kind of curious. Do you ever talk to fighters as far as their thoughts on things like these Jake Paul events, Ames? I'm just curious as to what the take from folks might be on this kind of stuff, and if as much as some people make money from it being on the undercards, I wonder like how many people are offended the amount of bucks that this guy can make off of the sport.
Depends who you speak to. It's a mixed reaction when it comes to Jake. Certainly within, first of all, if you look at this, or when I've had some of the conversations within the media, and if you look at the attitude to Jake and the influencer scene, he sort of came into that scene and then he broke off and separated into it and then looked to take himself more seriously than those social media influencers and shunned that title of social media influencer type boxer and wanted to take it serious and wanted to take the professional route. I'd say to have fought 2, now 3 professional fighters, I would say grants him that title of being a true professional fighter in its most basic form, but has to be given the respect of that title, just as any prospect making their debut or their first few fights on the ladder. I think that respect has got to be given, but you can look deeper into it than that because of the matchmaking and the operation that they're running to make money from his status and fame and the eyeballs that he can attract, and they've done that to a T. But to have not just done that, but also facilitated the growth of Amanda Serrano's career, the paychecks she's been given, the push for female boxing. This card is, if you don't like female boxing, fine. If you do, then you've got all the talent, essentially all the talent you would want to see on that card, minus Clarissa Shields. And maybe that will come in time because Clarissa's final fight with Dimitri Salita is coming up. But that it's about as stellar as card as you can get with the female fights. And that's Jake Paul and MVP behind that. And sure, the cost isn't as much as it would be for the men's side, but I don't think it's just Jake's doing it just for PR. I do think he legitimately does care about MVP and then Amanda Serrano and trying to make more opportunities for them. And of course, there's obviously the other side of it is the money you get from it, but there's not a lot of people who are choosing to go that route specifically, and he has. When you speak to fighters, so I was at the McGuigan gym the other week for Ellie Scotney's media day, and I asked Shane about it, and Shane said as much of the same thing. He seems to have taken himself serious, and he seems to want to improve. At least that's what social media tells us. Now, anyone who's been watching Jake more closely, maybe from his fight previous now into this fight, you've got to ask yourself the question, how much has he improved? How much has he learned? If he's got the resources, the gym, the time, the training partners, the sparring partners, has he improved more than someone else who didn't have his social media fame would with that amount of resources? That's the question you got to answer yourself. And you'd probably say no. You'd probably say that he either doesn't have the natural talent for it or hasn't committed as much as he could have. But you'd also have to forgive that with the side of, you've got to balance. Like, look at the other side of the coin where it's KSI, and he's now coming out on social media. I saw this clip today, actually, and it's a bit of a shame because KSI is now coming out of boxing. And then coming out of boxing, he's got a lot of negativity because it's cost him elements of his career where he could have focused on this and it could have made him more money here, as opposed to talking about the great sides of the mental health benefits or kids getting into the gyms and how he'd improved his physique and that sort of thing. And that's a real shame. Whereas Jake promotes the positive side of things, and I appreciate that. And people like Shane do appreciate that, and that he wants to improve. But I had a conversation with Lee Cutler, who was at the gym, and I said, "Do you see him as a professional fighter?" And he goes, "No, not really, because he hasn't had those fights. He hasn't gone the route that I or others have had, and because of what he brings and because of the backing that he has, he gets those opportunities. But you can't call him a legitimate professional fighter on the basis that
he kind of feels like a club fighter on a global tour at times, doesn't he?
I don't know if would you call him a club fighter level?
Yes.
So
with a really good right hand. I think that his right hand is pretty legit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's one of what really kind of puts a lot of people off is the lingering whispers surrounding the fights of what supposedly are in these contracts. There's not been any proof of it. No fighters have since spoken about what, or said on record about what that means or what that is, if there's any truth to that. But there's always these whispers surround in the scene that you can't do this or this isn't allowed or whatever. Again, it's not been substantiated, but that puts a little bit of a thought behind what are you actually looking at. But look, if you take this as seen, he probably looks about that level, and he was competitive with Tommy Fury, who people look at similarly but better than, and has had fights against journeyman fighters, which you'd usually do if you didn't have a big Love Island following and didn't have the Fury name. And he has wins against what you would do for the normal process of a professional career. So I think that means that you'd have to give Jake Paul that respect and status as a professional fighter. But it's of course separate to what real and true professional boxing on a hardcore basis, what we're talking about is. But with that said, I'm looking forward to this fight against Chavez Jr. And Chavez is an interesting character in himself, because Chavez gets a lot of ridicule. Chavez gets a lot of talk about himself as a character. But this is a guy who had a tremendous rise from the top and is obviously in the shadow of his father, an insurmountable shadow of his own father. But won a world title, and if you look at some of the fighters he beat Andy Lee, who's widely respected, and now
terrible stoppage,
whatever you want to say, but you got the victory. And people might cast doubts about Chavez Jr. in that fight as well, but he got the victory over it, won a legitimate world title, and then fell off a cliff completely. And the scenes of his father with his head in his hands will live on in memedom for many years. But
he's done it before. That was just the first time that it's been caught on camera. Trust me. Throughout his life, many times he's put his head in his hands because of that boy.
But the idea that is it 41?
Is that how old he is? I don't know. I thought he was
39.
I wouldn't be surprised. Plus, I'd say he's 40 plus minus 2 years.
So BoxRec says he's 39 years old. The idea that professional fighters, it's not strange for. So he fought middleweight, super middleweight, right? It's not strange for fighters around that level to be maybe 4 or 5 years retired from that point. If they're fighting around that 35, 36 age. So I know that his life has been that he's been removed from rehab a number of times and not lived the life of course and such. But the idea that someone at near 40 couldn't pull out a performance to beat what we've stated here as a club fighter is surprising, I would think. If it's all on the
James. I don't know, James. I don't know, dude.
I
think Jake Paul is plugged in around the gyms and that, isn't he? Like, so they know how. Even when Chavez was in his prime, Freddie Roach, I think, at one stage had to get rid of him because he wouldn't come to the gym to train. He wanted to do his pad work in his own sitting room. So that would raise some question marks maybe about his hunger and his dedication. he obviously has his problems with the drugs and all that. Like, and Anderson Silva, I think, beat him in a boxing match, didn't he, in an exhibition? And Jake Paul, like he beat Andy, he did okay against Jake Paul. Anderson Silva, I think Anderson Silva, or Jake Paul might have dropped him along the way. But these guys are ripe for the picking. Paul, as the further he goes on, like he's never going to fight a real fighter. That's the shtick. Like that's why people keep tuning in. Like it's like it's the fucking will he do it the next time? You know, he's slowly building his profile. He's beating some good MMA guys. He's beating some fucking NBA guys. He's beating a 60-year. He's beating a 60-year-old boxer. Well, he's beating a boxer now who's 40, but he's a former world champion. I guess the next step, he's never going to fight a real guy. Like never. He's getting older too. Like when the fuck is it? Do you know what I mean? So the grift is like, look at one way of looking at it is that he's bringing boxing to. He helped bring boxing to Netflix. Like, and now Netflix are involved, and now Netflix are going to show Crawford and Canelo. And even if you hate that fight, it's probably the two modern era greats going out to the biggest fucking audience that they could possibly get out to. Like,
And it's not on pay-per-view. Fuck them, yeah, right? It's like seriously.
yeah. And then it's like, and then you've got the Jake Paul thing. So it's either going to do one thing or the other. Because if you're going to draw people in, he does draw people in. They created the whole Misfits lane off the back of his YouTuber boxer success. And he pays the fighters and that. Like, so there's lots of good stuff about him. Like, he's paid Serrano over the years. He's paid Baumgartner. He's got people paid and stuff. And he is a boxing head, but he's never going to fucking fight a real fighter. I don't think anyway. I think the grift is in the what's next for Jake Paul. You know that way. Like he'll never fight. Like they talk about Frotch and all and whatever. He never fight Frotch. Like
no, they're talking about
okay. Wait. Sorry, wait.
Davis in a fucking exhibition next. Seriously.
So you're saying he won't fight Carl Froch, but why?
Well, maybe now when he's on his fucking rocket chair, like, but he's not going to fight. Like, he's not going to fight somebody that's going to beat him. Like, you know that way.
So you think Carl Froch still have it in him to beat him, but not Chavez Jr.
Yes,
I would 20 times the fighter that Chavez Jr. was. Like,
yes, absolutely.
I think if you look at Chavez's career, like, what do you think is going to be different when he comes back? Like, is his reflexes and all are going to be shot. The legs are going to be gone. He's not going to like turn his lifestyle around and all. I've seen some of the stuff from training. I know one of the girls that's a ring cat girl. I've seen it. He already looks like a sitting duck. Like
legs are shaky. Septum is deviated.
Yeah, not great. It's not looking good, bruv.
I don't know. What's fucked up though is that Jake Paul gets airtime, and like you probably get more listens on this portion of the show than anything else when it when it all comes down to it, because that's kind of what people are into, and it's for better or worse, it just is how it is. And do you believe like there's any chance he'll nurse his way to a title, Ames, like or to a title opportunity? I see like they keep talking about it and they keep finding little ways to just kind of bump him up in these rankings and shit like that. And it's just, I don't know. It's just it smells dirty. It smells like a con that's going. And I say this while saying ultimately Jake Paul's been a net positive for boxing simultaneously. It's a bizarre universe.
Yeah, so I think absolutely that's what the plan seems to be. I mean, off the back of the Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury fight, didn't the WBC say that they were going to rank the winner in the top 20?
Top 40, I think, or top 30. 40. Yeah.
Right, so whatever it was, a place that maybe respectfully neither belonged. But I think off the back of when Tommy Fury won, he didn't get ranked as highly as people anticipated he might have done. But that's what they talk about, that this potential could be that he would fight Chavez Jr. and then go on to fight Badu Jack, and then Badu Jack would still have way too much for Jake Paul. Like there's a stark difference between Chavez Jr. than Jake Paul would. So I don't know what the route is legitimately to a cruiserweight world champion versus Jake Paul, and whether they just want to say, the Rocky story was because Rocky fought and he lost against Apollo Creed. Jake Paul is this generation's Rocky. He fought for a world title, didn't win it, but fought for one. And the other side of that is just as much as titles can be found. There's currently WBO global champions and WBO world champions, I don't know what the difference between global and world is, but the same thing in my book, but not in boxing.
English language.
Not if you're a flat
Is it the
earther.
flat globe world title or the round world
Not if you're a
title? We don't
flat
know.
earther.
Well, maybe that's the title they'll come up with, but there are routes to create world champions or championships, trinkets, or whatever it is for Jake Paul. But anything legitimate where it's against a proper world champion at cruiserweight,
you get badly hurt.
It's not it's a dangerous affair. So I don't know where that
This
goes.
fucking reboot of Rocky is the worst. Fucking these modern day reboots are terrible, by the way. Rocky was a blue collar fucking meat packer from Philadelphia, struggling club fighter. Like Jake Paul was a fucking
Not a white collar fudge packer.
Yeah, goes from Disney Club to the worst. Like fucking hell.
It's all very fucked up. Anyway, that's gonna get us fucked up. Anyway, man, I don't know. Do you take any positives from Jake Paul, or is it just all too much of a circus that offends you on some sort of a deep, ethereal level?
No, you nailed it. It's exactly what it does. Yeah, I shouldn't say this because I shouldn't take it that seriously, but it does offend me a little bit. It's not for me. Although having said that, I do really like some of the stuff Jake Paul's brought into boxing in terms of I like the fact that he's getting kids out, he's keeping fighters active, he pays them well, he pays them on time. I like the fact that he's brought Netflix into boxing, and I like the fact that he could potentially ruffle some feathers and dislodge some of the old guard that have had it too easy for too long. But in terms of his boxing, no, not for me, not interested.
Well, there you go. That was very succinct.
Let me come in though, and let me say this for anyone who, for Jake Paul and the Misfit scene as well too. In one, for I know that boxing and hardcore boxing fans don't like it, don't want anything to do with it, but when it comes to the effects it has trickling down the line, I can say I've seen it firsthand because I'm training. When I say training, I don't mean in a professional sense or anything like that, but just doing some boxing training and get myself fitter and healthier. And I'm in there nearly daily basis, but 3 times a week I'll go to McCracken's gym, which is local to myself, and I'll constantly see young men filtering through who have ambitions to fight white collar or get onto Misfits because they've seen a social media influencer come in and not maybe have the most of talent, but they can use boxing to make a little bit of money and make a little bit of thing of themselves. And I think that is great because it gets people into the gym, and when they get in the gym, they stay in the gym. And I've seen that myself firsthand. I think that is the net benefit. And
that one, it's kind of like when Katie Taylor won the Olympics over here, and all the women went to the gym in Ireland for about a week. They gave that shit up fucking quicker than lightning, man. They didn't last that long.
Well, honestly, there's so many people coming through. There's so many people coming through that want to try their hand at it. And sure, not everyone stays, but some make an opportunity out of it. I think that's
how's things going in McCracken's fight now? Are they moving you up to 12-year-olds to spar, or?
That's a little bit harsh, bro. That's a little bit harsh.
I went in and I sparred that little fella again. His name is Zayden. And we were just doing a bit of body spar, and one of his shots went a little bit above the body and hit me right in the chin. And he goes to me, he stops and goes, "Oh, you okay? You okay, pal?" I'm like, "I'm fucking okay. Don't worry, pal."
Come on, Zayden.
Ames, you know the rule when one goes astray, didn't you? You got to do it back.
No.
It's okay apologising. It's gone low. Now have one of mine. And it's the same
but
give them one back, and it's all square.
I'm fearful of what's coming back. That's the issue.
You don't want to make him mad. This fucking 11-year-old's supposed to be the world. He's like cash flow off the fucking money team, this young man.
Exactly. So but it's going good, man. Yeah, I really enjoy my time there. So more of it.
Big up to you too, by the way, long time pod listener who's a trainer down there at McCracken's.
Hell yeah. And I mentioned in the chat as well too that there is an Olympic and pro heavyweight that tunes in, and his manager that tunes in. So there's definitely a lot of people listening and getting their hardcore fix.
Fuck, I hope I didn't say anything about him.
Oh, you inevitably have, Rob.
You
It's just a
definitely have.
numbers game.
You definitely have. And you, Matty.
I'm a bastard. I'm a real bastard.
Ames, you were saying something there about Jake Paul, and you've seen the trickle down effect, and I don't doubt that for 1 minute, and that is a positive. But boxing's always done that, but we didn't need social media influencers to inspire young people to get in gyms. We used to have British champions and Commonwealth champions and area champions that would inspire young kids to get in the gym. I think what's happened is I think boxing dropped the ball a little bit in terms of its marketing, its the way it publicizes itself, the way it reaches out to its own community. And I think boxers and boxing sort of dropped the ball, which allowed guys like Jake Paul, and I don't have a problem with this, by the way, influencing the next generation. But I feel a bit sad that this generation has not been influenced by the really good boxers.
I mean, but the thing is, how many of them are there, and how many of them are making loads of money, and then how many of them are then flaunting that they're making loads of money? Because this generation coming through now, they're following.
That's all they care about.
Yeah, exactly. So unless you're showing that making a load of cash, which is what the social media influencers do, and they don't connect. You look at TikTok, and you get paid, right, for TikTok if you get more than a 3-second view. So you've got to capture that person's attention in 3 seconds. How do you do that? Boxing doesn't do that enough. But someone flashing their cash, speaking loud, trash talking, shoving, whatever it is, wearing a fake £300 suit like Jake Paul does, whatever it is, that captures their attention. And that gets funneled through into down the line, whatever, back into boxing. But boxers don't do that. AJ's a picture of, as the cleanest image as you can and the PR friendly and stuff. Tyson Fury has made, he's brought the talent with it, with the some of the comments and remarks. He said Alexander Usyk isn't going to resonate with the British crowd as much as he would with the Ukrainian crowd. But other than those names, Ben Whittaker is now. But look at what Ben Whittaker's doing. Ben Whittaker's doing the flashy stuff. Ben Whittaker's doing a rap song.
Well, he was the guy, wasn't he? He was the guy to appeal to the. Me and Wellington talked about that before. Like he was the guy that was going to appeal to the TikTok generation.
Yep.
If they matched him right, but then what's his TV deal looking like now? Because Boxer are gone out of it at this. So who's he with now?
It depends. There's a lot of. It depends. There's a lot of kind of whispers about whether fighters are signed to Boxer specifically or Sky Sports Boxing specifically. Nothing's come out concrete.
Him and Eddie looked very cozy last night ringside, I thought.
Yeah, but Eddie said as much as to say that he's got a contract.
Yeah,
so
you have to say that, of course.
But if Eddie's publicly saying that he's got a contract, then there is something that's blocking him from saying.
Wasn't there a Paramount deal or something waiting in the wings for him before the first camera fight?
Absolutely.
There was something like that, wasn't there? And then that didn't.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't know.
Peacock.
Yeah, Peacock. Sorry, yeah.
That's right. And then that
that basically fucked that whole thing. That was one more American outlet that bit the dust.
But you're talking one guy in a generation of in that Olympic cycle that can resonate.
It's just a bit shitty, isn't it? Like I love Thomas Hearns and all, but it wasn't like, Thomas Hearns got in the bank. You know that way? That wasn't really what the appeal was. Like, you know that way? When I was a kid, the thing was different. We knew these guys were making tons of money, but we didn't really give a shit because we were captivated by the actual action in the ring. Like some of the fuckers never talk. I can't remember some fighters I could have watched in my whole life and never remember him saying anything. Like Marlon Sterling, I couldn't tell you what he sounds like. You know that way?
Rob, you couldn't tell me what Baron McGuigan earned beating Eusebio Pedrosa, could you? You couldn't tell me what Tommy Earns got for fighting Marvin Hagler. You couldn't tell me what Frank Bruno got for fighting Mike Tyson first time round. But what you remember is like Charlie Magri or the equivalent at a sports shop. You'd go in there and you'd talk to him and he'd size you up for a pair of gloves or boots. Or you could see Dennis Andrews running down Mare Street or the equivalent, and that inspired you. I do take what Ames is saying. Absolutely, this is the new era.
Different generation. Yeah,
it's totally new.
And in ways, boxing needs, we could say, this is like the old subject that we always end up coming back to. But boxing needs new styles. Like it needs people to drive the sport forward, no matter what the vehicle is. Jake Paul, love him or hate him, he probably came to the game with a learned on the job marketing degree that he's got from his YouTube success, and was able to transfer from that across into like the podcast world, the social media era, the TikTok era, the Insta, whatever it is. Like he knows how to get engagement. Like so, what if we get a guy like that can fight, Ryan Garcia was the closest I think that was gonna, but then he's got a Ryan Garcia in himself, hasn't he? He kind of made a right Ryan Garcia out of it. So he was the one I had high hopes for. I don't really know who'll be the next one, but what I would say is I talked shit about that Canelo Crawford fight for ages. Now that it's happening and it's such a big deal and it's on Netflix and that, like, can't be unless it's the thinker of a fight. It's got to be good for the sport, bringing eyes to the two of those guys to be the leaders, because Canelo's had one foot out the door towards retirement for the last maybe 3 or 4 years, going through the motions, collecting the bag, and Crawford's been striving for greatness, achieve what he wanted to, and then looking for the big payday for the exit. So all that footage, all that coverage and everything, that's going to create a huge amount of traffic towards boxing. And if you're going to have it, the biggest spectacle and it's on Netflix, it might as well be the two of them as opposed to anybody else.
I'm going to be out for the fight, but I'm just excited that it's going to be non-pay-per-view. There needs to be some other player in the game who puts some sort of a non-pay-per-view pressure on the sport. It's getting just too ridiculous at this point in time.
It's this shit that Canelo waited till his last fight ever to learn how to speak English fluently and do. He did an interview with Piers Morgan, the two of them. Did you see that? Crawford
No, I need to watch. I need to watch that.
Well, Canelo speaks perfect English throughout the whole interview, which is something I'd rarely seen him do.
Yeah, and I think his time on the golf course has helped him with that too.
You want baby?
Yeah, he's definitely his English tongue has gotten way better since he fought Demetrius Andrade for sure. There's no lie. But yeah, I don't know. It's Netflix. I'm glad there's another player. Top Rank going away is very interesting.
It's good to have Piers Morgan in taking all the boxing access away, by the way, and giving this interview on his chat. This is what you want, like Piers Morgan asking the real questions to two prize fighters. He asked both of them, "Would you be able to kill me with your bare hands?"
That was so weird.
Wasn't it weird? It was a bit like you have a bit of a fucking sounded like some kind of fantasy shit. He's like, would both of you be able to kill me with your bare hands? You would you? How would you kill me? Would you choke me? Would you?
That's great.
Oh, fuck me.
And then they said he sparred Manny Pacquiao.
Like to see that footage.
Yeah.
I swear. All right, yeah, that's on my list now. So yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have anything else right now? I appreciate you all coming in and making this a show. At 25 minutes in, I thought it was going to be just my take and Justin for 5 minutes, and then I was going to go take a nap. But here we are 2 hours later. Well done.
Oh yeah, one of the listeners raises a good point. What do you reckon about Usyk and Krasuk splitting up at this stage? What's this? Is this that Usyk don't want to pay Krasuk for the last couple of fights out, or what is it?
I haven't seen anything. Ames or Danny.
Yeah, they've initially split.
Yeah.
No, generally not heard anything as to the reason why. I think there were some rumors about it maybe a couple of months back, but nothing came of it until now. But no reason as to why that was or anything to have come out from it. I don't know.
Was Krasuk
about...
on the old 25%? Was he on something like that?
No idea, to be honest with you. Genuinely.
I think Usyk's got his own. He's got his own promotional company now as well. So you're probably right, Rob. He's just thinking that's
isn't it? Just
I don't need to be giving out.
You know what? I would give this if Turkey's going to be throwing out the fucking big bread here for the last 2 fights. So I'm going to give this fella. He's rich enough already.
He doesn't need a promoter for a rebuild if things go wrong, does he?
Not at all. He's fucking. I don't think things are going to go wrong for what. What way do we see that playing out? Obviously, that's a bit away, isn't it? Usyk and Dubois, but I kind of hate this fight for Dubois because as much as it's a big fight, I would have loved to see the rematch with AJ and then maybe a fight Fury or something like that. I don't know, but there's no point. He's going to lose to Usyk again, isn't he? He's worked so hard to become a world champion. Why the fuck rushing back straight in with Usyk?
I think if Joshua lost to Dubois again, that a fight with Fury was out the window, or at least it wasn't going to make anybody as much money as it originally would have. He couldn't. So I kind of understand that play.
But they could have put
Never happen now, I don't think.
AJ in with Fury and Dubois gets the winner. They could have given Parker to Usyk. I do agree with what Rob's saying. Daniel Dubois has done so well to get here. He's now going to get beat by Usyk, and he snakes and ladders. He goes back to where he started. I'd like to see him Dubois with Fury or AJ or even Wardley. I think there was better fights for him before he had the Usyk fight at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it was more on the Usyk end. It was a desire of Usyk's to become undisputed again. That was the sort of rumblings around it.
Right.
I would suggest that it was a desire from Frank Warren to control the heavyweight division, because if you see all of the current pawns in place, it's all Queensbury who are vying for those number one or next in line positions. And
so you give him you can make Moses Atuma make basically the youngest fucking
Moses Atuma, Derek Chisora, Joseph Parker, Caballel, Akoli, whoever it is, they're all.
Atuma's one, by the way, that could draw people in over the years or over the time. I think with his style, depending on the ceiling, like, but he certainly fucking has everything. Like,
he's got to work on the media side of things, and it's something he's admitted that he's going to do. What my bugbear with Moses Atuma is that as much as he wants to and say that he wants to work with the media, he doesn't do a lot of the media on our side of things, which is a shame, because he's a good talker and certainly like another opportunity. There's many to speak to him, but it's one that he seems to want to improve on without actually wanting to speak to the media at the moment. But no, that's obviously his prerogative to do so. But also the other side of things is like DAZN as well. DAZN need to push boxing, need to push these big nights, and there's nothing bigger than an undisputed heavyweight clash. And if you can make that again for the second time in a short period, then that you've got to make it, because there are very few other fights that are going to command pay-per-view in the UK involving a UK fighter, and Dubois is now in a position to be that fighter, so you can get him over that berth, and he's got a real chance in it, and that fight comes down to, I know it's the rhetoric right now, but with respect to Don Charles and the team, it's not a fight on technical skills from a Dubois perspective. It's a fight purely on mentality, because if Dubois can handle being up against it when he was stopped beforehand by that same guy who's in front of him, and come back and fight and land that punch again, but above the navel, then he's in with a real chance to finish off Alexander Usyk.
Do you fancy him, man? Do you fancy him?
No, I don't fancy him. I don't. And it will all show in the moment, but it could easily be a repeat of the first fight. And that's the way I've got to lean for it, because Dubois shown the mentality off the back of Jarrell Miller, but that's at a level below of Alexander Usyk. And until he's done it there, I can't really go for Dubois just yet.
He's going to be flying full of confidence, like off the fucking back of it. But that last minute pull out, it was a Parker. Last minute pull out, then this fight gets made. I don't know, it was sketchy enough. I don't know, it's been a bit of inactivity there as well. And what I'd say about the fighters that he's fought since he fought Usyk last time, isn't that a big baby Miller, a Hrgovic, and an AJ? Although he's looked great, especially in the AJ fight. I think AJ was made for Dubois. Made for him, absolutely made for him. Fucking stands up straight, chin up in the air. Probably best days behind him. Dubois can really whack. He had nothing to fear from AJ. They'd shared the ring before, sparred. He probably got the better of it. He was seeing through AJ's tough guy acting in the build up and that. It was made for him, like it was his moment. But they worked so hard to get him there. It's fucking like putting him back in there with Usyk. I'm with Days. I don't see a way for Dubois to win. Although I like the guy, like, you know, that way. What I'm trying to say is I like the kid Dubois. I think he's got massive appeal. He's a big puncher. He stops fights. And of course, I want the best guy to be the best. And we always want one champion in that. But like, Usyk's been undisputed already. Like, the fact that the belt fraction is what it is. Like, let fucking Dubois hold on to his belt, get some experience before you put him back in with Usyk. But that would be my wish for him. But I think Usyk's just got too much. And I think once he's had a look at him the first time, Ames is talking about him landing that shot above the navel this time. Why I think Usyk used his experience. I think he sold one to the referee that night. I think that shot could be easily construed as a legal shot, and it would have been a knockdown. Having said that, I think he was totally conscious of the count at the time and just waited his moment till he got his bit of time, and he used his experience to recover, and then he went on and took over in the fight, like just moved through the gears. And I think he'd just do that again. He'd have a look at him for a few rounds, and I don't think Dubois is going to be able to do anything different to set him up to catch him. It's hitting Usyk is the problem, you know that way. So yeah,
it's added to that is like, this is the guy who's beating him in front of him again. How does he process all that and then fighting that guy at the same time? Can
he gets better in the rematch, Usyk, don't he? Like,
yeah, but I would have thought that the Joyce defeat, they would have found an opportunity to try and rematch Joyce at some juncture, and that was never a conversation that was had. And I'm not trying to stretch that out to say that he didn't rematch Joyce because he didn't have the mentality for it, but I do wonder how Dubois processes the fact that this guy has beaten me, this guy has stopped me, and I'm at my momentum now, but this guy is going to take that from me in this fight because that's what he does. So how do I come back?
I think that's the worrying thing. I think that's the worrying thing if you're a part of Dubois camp, because where do you go from there with him? Because he's a confidence fighter, isn't he? Like, so he thrives off confidence, and when his self-belief is high, he feels like he can knock out the world. What's going to happen in the middle of the ring when all the confidence starts to drain away, when he's like, oh, fuck, I'm back here again. Here's this fucker moving side to side on me and pot shotting me and fucking banging me up. And if he gets stopped again, like, I think it's a long road back for him more so than fight fans. So fight fans want to see him back, but I think that would have a big impact on him psychologically.
Oh, he's going to get absolutely ripped, isn't he, by the boxing media unfairly as well, I might add.
Yeah, because they're bastards, me self-included.
Yeah.
Did you just say you're part of the mainstream media, Rob?
I wish.
Rob's going to write a diss. Rob's going to come out of retirement with a diss track for Dubois.
They wouldn't let me back in. I don't think they wouldn't let me in. I've burned too many bridges. Like, I don't think I could do it with a straight face now. I couldn't go back like Carl the Cobra now, like after going for slaughter and being everybody's best mate just because I had access to him. You know that way.
Oh, what could have been? Anyways, yeah. Trying to think if there was anything else, but I think we basically got it covered. Unless anybody can think of anything else there. Fantastic.
Just a thank you to you, Matty, for keeping it going.
Thank you to you guys, and for Eamon Khan's work. Check out Seconds Out. And Danny, please go ahead and plug your stuff. I know you're getting a good number of views these days.
I'm a man without a home. I've been doing freelance gigs, Matty, so I don't want to plug anyone who's not giving me a full-time wage.
Where were you working? Who were you working for this weekend?
Oh, terrible outlet this weekend. What they called like Second something? I don't know.
The second rate you are, that's for sure.
Great
Seconds Out, great people. Seconds Out, fantastic people, all of them.
I forgot, but both of you guys are with them. Jesus Christ. Well, here we are, 95-degree heat, and we're getting through it over here in Colorado. So yeah, I'd like to thank Justin as well for being out here for as long as he could. Rob for stopping in here. And Danny and Dez and Ames. I've been your host, Matthew John Ardo. We'll see you fine folks next week for another edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse. God help us all if I make it through another one. We'll see y'all next time.
We'll never forget.
Golly, that's good at me.
Go to and move! We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking so that can fight me.
I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7 year ain't it? 7 year ain't it? I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love Boxing Asylum. It's as simple as that.